I'll call the Board of Selectmen meeting for October 22nd, 2018. Got new microphones. We're all in session. May take a minute to get used to them. For those of you sitting at the table here with me, you've noticed that the microphones look the same, but they're a little bit longer. That is encouraging us to talk into them. I've heard a few comments from people at home watching that they can't hear everything because people aren't talking right into the microphone. So this is their fix on it. Just bring it right up to your face there. All right. We have. We'll start with some announcements and board openings. We have a position open in the Council on Aging Board. We have a position on the Board of Health. We have some open space committee openings as well. Some announcements now. Pumpkin Fest will take place this Saturday, October 27th from 12 to 3 p.m. Drug Take Back Day will be Saturday, October 27th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At the Hamilton Police Department. Early voting will take place at Town Hall October 22nd through November 2nd, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Friday, 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. All residents in need to review their Medicare prescription or drug advantage plans during open enrollment, which is October 15th through December 7th. Please contact the Council on Aging Director, Mary Beth Lawton, at 978-468-5595 to make an appointment with the Shine Counselor. Town Hall will be open, holding their Halloween open house on October 31st from 2 to 4 p.m. All trick-or-treaters are invited. Brush drop-off will take place on October 31st, 2018 from 7:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. at the landfill on Chabaco Road. And also wasn't on our agenda for an announcement, but many of you may have received some mailers and phone calls and code red alerts about our energy aggregation program. I encourage you to take a look at all that information, and hopefully in the next bill or so you'll be noticing a change in your electrical rate for the better. And now we have a section for public comment. Any 3 minutes on topics not already on the agenda. If anybody wants to come up and speak to anything, they're more than welcome to. All right. We have an update from Patrick, but first I'll ask Brad, do you have any time frame? Are you okay for a minute or two, or you gotta? Okay. We have I'll do the town, trying to think the best way to kind of expedite stuff. I think we'll do the Selectmen reports and we'll go through them pretty quickly. So Allison, if you have anything for Selectmen reports, we'll share them now.
Hydrant flushing was complete on 10/16 for anyone curious. So we should be all set in that regard. I did look into and send some information to the town manager for a backup way to fill up our town vehicles at the various gas stations. Found out we do not actually pay the pump cost. They have additional reporting, and our tanks right now are 30 years old, which is past the life expectancy. I wanted to thank everyone for attending town meeting. I know that we had 375 plus attendees, which is much better attendance than we had during the nights. We had a hard time getting a quorum of 75 or 100 when it was on Monday nights. So thank you for everybody attending, and a lot of hard work went into that behind the scenes. The Town Hall Building Committee received 9 proposals right here related to the Hamilton Town Hall Preservation Design Services. So the committee's going to go look for them this week and hopefully rate their top companies to look at. Habitat for Humanities on Asbury Street. We got an update that the interiors are complete, and they hope to be closing up on the properties by the end of the month. If anyone wants to volunteer for the landscaping and paving of the driveways, that's what they're looking for. Gordon Conwell Task Force came in front of CPC, David Smith, and I thought he did a great job. He is going around actually to all of the committees to get feedback on any way any of the committees thinks that a pilot program could help, which I thought was great. And that, I believe, is all I have.
All right. Jeff?
Just real quickly, all I have is the Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary task force met today, obviously under Joe's guidance, and really at a point where, as you mentioned, Allison, they're doing an extensive amount of work and trying to learn both sides of what's happening here from the perspective of the town and what costs may be out there, what benefits may be out there. And also a big part of it is understanding the seminary better. And I think the hope is, well, first of all, the seminary has a new president, which has delayed things a little bit in terms of forward progress. The hope is that we'll be able to get together and meet with them at the beginning of November. And in addition to that meeting, the hope is that prior to that we could get a tour of the whole facility and get an understanding of what building is what and what happens in these buildings. But they're doing a tremendous amount of work, as you said, Allison, doing kind of the background work at this point. You have anything to add, Joe?
You did a pretty good job of summarizing it. The the previous president is outgoing. They're in the middle of transition. They asked us to, hold off until the beginning of November sometime. I am going to be asking them to allow us to take a tour with somebody who understands the grounds prior to that, and then we'll start up discussion again, meaningful discussion again. We had asked them to appoint a subcommittee to work with our committee, and they wanted to wait until after November for us to do that. So,
all right, that's all I have.
All right. I'll be fairly brief. The ConsCom, they have a meeting on Wednesday. They're discussing with some of the Patton Ridge residents the mowing and lawn delineation there. If you recall, there's a handful, not really a handful, of some acreage there that's open space for the town, and some of their lawns were encroaching on it, and some of their residents were concerned about some area around the beech trees and stuff like that. So the ConsCom and the Patton Ridge residents are kind of working out lawn mowing extensions and stuff like that, and some other kinds of plantings over by the beech trees, and doing some more delineation with some posts with some signs on it, so the landscapers and stuff like that that are doing the mowing for Patton Ridge don't encroach into that space. Just an update on Weaver Pond. At town meeting, we approved some CPC money to help kind of, I guess, refurbish the pond, get rid of a lot of the plants that are encroaching there, and hydro rake it, and that will all start in the summer, and they'll hydro rake in August. There's ongoing knotweed removal. This one's kind of my favorite one because they take all this knotweed and they give it to the giraffes at the zoo, which is kind of a funny thing to me, but I guess the animals at the zoo love this stuff, so we're providing a service to the zoos and get rid of an invasive species at the same time. The rec department's meeting tonight, and to piggyback on Allison's comment about Bill Smith from the Board of Health, who's also on the GCTS task force, he's talking to them tonight and asking them what they think about the asset they're looking for and what the rec department might be looking for from the college as part of an in-kind donation. The winter brochure for the rec department is coming out soon. And they're talking about Pingree Park tennis courts. If you've been over there, they're kind of derelict, and they're trying to figure out what to do with them. And then they're also having a turf field update tonight. I'm not sure the details of it, but details that come since I'm not at the meeting and I'm here. And that's it for me. Joe.
Because we did get started a little late, if you folks wouldn't mind, if we could maybe start with Patrick and some of the others, and deference to our guests, and then if you don't mind holding some space at the end for me to circle back.
Yeah, we can do that.
It'll also give me a chance to go down and grab them off of my desk so that I can actually speak to something.
All right, so at this point I'll introduce our Head of Planning and Inspections, Patrick Reffett.
Thank you very much, Sean and Joe. Again, my name is Patrick Reffett. I'm Director of Planning and Inspections. I am here to speak to you briefly about the joined inspectional services department that Wenham and Hamilton have joined upon. In a word, we're doing well. The program started basically at the end of August. As this board knows, you helped to select some of the staff. Those staff are still in a probationary mode. The program purpose was to really allow the communities to afford better code enforcement, better building inspection services, more reporting, and we're getting that. I'm very pleased to say we have a lot more diligent efforts taking place. The building inspector is here from 7:30 until 1:30 every day. We work together throughout that period. He'll have questions, I'll have questions. That's working out really well. I'm pleased with that. As the board knows, the program's being managerially overseen by the town of Wenham. We have a coordination meeting once a month. We actually had one today. We've begun our budgeting request process as of today as well. So we're formulating that for 2020. That's, as I say, it's being formulated. There's some things that we're doing some research relative to how much ongoing education needs to be for certifications, those kinds of things to keep the inspectors up to speed. But like I say, it's going well. There are always logistics that need to be worked out. When you start a program like this, when you divide staff time between two communities, what really works out well is that we're both geographically small and very close. Travel times are really quick, and plus we already have a good working relationship with Wenham as it is. So that's basically my update for the board, and happy to take questions if you might have them.
How's the software rollout been for us?
That's going to be January. I know that Wenham had wanted to do it in October with us in January, but then they decided, and I think it's appropriate, to do it all at one time rather than to have the consultant do it basically twice.
2 times, yeah.
So we'll work together on that.
Okay, good. Questions, Jeff?
No
Comments?
questions, thank you.
Sure.
Allison?
So I think it's a great program. I think anything we can do like this is great, and I have full respect for our neighbors. When we went through the hiring process, though, is when I saw the details of the program as it rolled out. And I'd like to see if we can tweak that. Right now, Hamilton pays 67% of the cost share, but has no input as to staffing and hiring for those roles. And I think that's something that we really have to tweak. Additionally, properties excluded from the calculation on how we got to this 67%. One would be Gordon College, which I would say is a significant in the world of inspections for the town of Wenham. And it also does exclude Gordon Conwell for us, but Gordon Conwell does not have the same amount of activity as Gordon College. So I'm extremely happy that we're there and that it rolled out, but having read the details of what the town manager prior to Joe negotiated as far as the program, I think we need to relook at that.
Speaking to Allison's point, and I wasn't at the meeting when we were with the Wenham Board of Selectmen and this core staff was chosen. Sad I couldn't be there, but my worry was that if something happened and we derailed the whole thing, I'd like to roll it out and see kind of how it goes. I'm assuming we're collecting data on how many inspections in each town and stuff like that over the next year, and how many calls and whatnot, so we can compare that when we do come back to revisit or renegotiate the contract. And how long, if you refresh my memory, how long was it for? Do you remember, Allison?
The contract has the calculations, how we calculate it built into it. And I don't remember the details, but the details that I remember specifically were the excluded properties and that
Right,
we have no
a
say,
time
but we
frame.
pay the lion's share.
Right.
I can tell you relative to that the vast majority of inspections that need to take place are occurring in Hamilton. In my estimation, we're getting at least 67% of the staff time, based on the fact the work demand is simply more here than there. As you say, we have more college space to deal with. We have more facilities of public accommodation here by far. The level of retail is significantly more here than there. So I'm pretty sure, but I will make absolutely sure, as we start seeing some data being put together, I'm hoping to get data at least every 3 months, so I can start tabulating those kinds of things, so I can make Joe and the board aware. I think that's important for us to do, to evaluate how we move along with this. I've always been concerned that, we get what we pay for. And I know that my counterparts in Wenham are very aware of that, so they're making sure that data is being prepared. Again, we've only been doing this for about 6 weeks now, but we will absolutely make sure that we have that put together for you.
And you and I have had a conversation several times over the handful of years I've been around, as far as unpermitted building renovations, et cetera, like that. And it's been a big problem in Hamilton over the years, and we've had that conversation. Is this new program, is there a part of it, or do you think this will help with that problem that we have in town?
I definitely think that having the presence of a building inspector going from A to B to Z in the community allows him to see more things that are happening. He's in contact with police and fire more often. He's in contact with contractors out in the field more often as well. So I'm pretty sure that we're getting a better understanding of, and he's notifying me of projects that are happening that for one reason or another had not been permitted.
Great.
That's an ongoing matter for us to deal with. Some people don't know that windows need to be permitted. They don't know that decks need to be permitted. But with energy codes being what they are with decks carrying loads of people sometimes that are unforeseen, there's some issues that we need to make sure that we protect the public.
Any other questions or comments for Patrick?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.
All right, and now comes our main event here. National Grid update for the Board of Selectmen with Faith Hassel and our favorite state representative, Mr. Brad Hill.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Mr. Town Manager, State Rep Hill, the members of the board, and the community. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So a few months ago, State Rep Hill and I, Joe Newman, our Government Affairs Director, and the previous leader and Tim Olson and a few other folks joined us in this room to talk about the outages that you've all been facing in the town. So the first thing that we went through was outages by cause. So we track and log all of the data with regard to every outage. So if you don't mind, I'll walk you through a little bit of the data, talk about how we feed Hamilton, and then talk about what we've been doing the past few months and the future. So year over year, if I look at my data from 2015, 2016, 17, and 18, year over year, the biggest cause of outage, between 80 and 91%, are either trees falling or broken limbs falling on our lines. So we spend millions of dollars a year as a company trying to mitigate that by using two different programs. So we have the hazard tree program, which goes out, assesses along our main line of distribution to any town we serve, between substation to substation, which trees are going to be the most hazardous if they fall. If they're deemed hazardous, we go and we take them out with town's approval. Tim Olson has been great with working with us as well. And then the second program that we have is trimming. So we'll go out and we'll trim 10 feet from the line to clear the line of any limbs that could be hanging over them. So Hamilton is fed in a few different ways. So you have 4 different feeders. So a feeder is the poles with the 3 large wires on them. That's what we call a feeder. So your biggest source of electricity comes from our East Beverly station, and it feeds a line that covers Essex Street, Bay Road, Moulton, hopefully I said that right, yep. Sagamore, Bridge Street, School Street, Miles River Road. So pretty much half the town, right? Then you have another feeder that splits off from Bay Road and goes up Asbury Street and Highland Street. And then you have a third feeder that comes from also our North Beverly station, comes up through Wenham, feeds the Highland Street, Railroad Ave, and Pine Tree Drive, and some other streets around that area, but those are the major roads that they feed. So what we do is, we assess which feeders, which lines of energy are most impacted by these outages, specifically with trees. When we met with State Rep Hill, there were several streets that were brought up as a major concern. The first takeaway from that meeting was to assess the equipment. Are there transformer failures? Are there fuses that are old? Are there cross arms that are broken? And can we fix those? So we did that assessment. Everything came back normal, safe and reliable. But we continue to have outages, and the majority of them all still come down to trees falling, limbs hitting our lines. I know most recently there was an outage that impacted a significant amount of area, Hamilton, Wenham, Essex, and it was related to squirrel contact. So what happens there is the squirrel touches an insulator, and that kind of protects the pole from becoming energized. Unfortunately, the squirrel doesn't make it. The fuse fails, and we go out and we fix the fuse. But it's not like the fuse was bad or old. It was just how it happened, unfortunately. But the week prior to that, a tree had fallen, and there was an outage related to that tree falling. So, any questions at that point? Did I cover everything? No.
No questions so far.
So, when I talk about tree trimming, when we had met last time, we had talked a significant about, what's going to happen in the next few months. So, along that major feeder that I talked about, Bay Road, Essex, Bay Road, Essex, the hazard tree program completed their assessment and has removed the hazardous trees along that main line that runs from East Beverly to Gloucester. including trees in Hamilton. So the next step, and what the crews are currently working on, is trimming the areas that are deemed most susceptible to limbs coming over the lines and could cause outages. So the trimming that's currently taking place on this specific feeder will address a significant amount of the tree-caused outages. So that's the major feeder. And I was happy to hear that good news. I know we're trying to get on some additional contractors as well in the next couple of months to make sure we get this done before the end of the year. Then the two other feeders that I mentioned, we are still working on removing some of the hazardous trees and trimming. The one that feeds the Pine Street and High Street and Railroad Ave, we're finishing up the trimming soon for that feeder. So all really good news. And I mean, we continue to invest in all of the tree trimming programs, and we work really closely with Tim Olson, the DPW director here, to make sure that, you know, we come before the right committees to make sure we get approval to remove trees. So from a tree trimming perspective, good news there. Also, another takeaway, in addition to reviewing the equipment, it was what other type of equipment can we see installed? So I've had our engineers look at adding some pieces of equipment to kind of isolate outages in the area. So I'm hopeful in the next year or so we'll see a couple of those in the area as well.
What does that pertain, or what does that mean?
Good question. So it's a complex system, but I'll try and we have a piece of equipment called a recloser, or kind of, as I was talking to this gentleman before, Duke, he was saying just like switches, right? So if you have a huge outage, you hope that you're able to, you know, either backfeed from a different area,
right,
so there's redundancy in the town, or if you can close off specific sections. So say, you know, from Bay Road to Essex Street, that is the only area that should be impacted because a tree fell there. So is there equipment we can put on either end to eliminate the rest of Bay Road or the rest of Essex Street being taken
Complete
out?
the circuit some other way, then, is what
Exactly.
you're saying. Gotcha.
And just section off that specific road so that only those customers would see the outage, but the rest would be able to be restored. That is our hope. And I have people looking into that now, pulling together the financials for it, petitioning it so that we can add some of that equipment to the town as well. And
Back to the trees for just a second.
yeah,
I would assume that when you're talking hazardous trees, it's dead or diseased, or there's limbs directly over the line, near the line.
correct.
Where is the kind of scope of distance for that trimming? Like I'm saying is, if there's a tree 5 feet away and the branches encroach, obviously you're going to trim the branches. Or if the tree is diseased and 5 foot away, you're going to remove the tree. But what's the kind of easement and distance? You know, if you've got a 70-foot tree and it's 30 feet away,
Right,
you're probably not going to cut down that tree, but if it falls, it's going to take down the lines.
right.
You know, where does the National Grid trimming and that end, or is it strictly just hazardous dead diseased trees, or is it counting trees just near there that are healthy trees?
Very good question. I'd have to get back to you on the specifics about that. I know it's a 10-foot scope that we kind of look at. We want 10 feet of clearance from our line to the trees. So when we trim, that's the kind of clearance we want. But for the specifics around kind of the examples you just gave me,
Right.
I would have to go back to our forestry supervisor and get that.
I'm sure, I mean, there's kind of both sides of the coin. There's people that, yeah, go ahead, that would want, you know, the tree to be cut because they don't want their power line to
Right.
come down. But then there's also people that, they love their trees. I love
Right.
my trees. You
Yeah.
know, you don't want to go into somebody's yard and cut down their
Right.
100-year-old oak tree or something like
Right.
that, so.
So under the scenario that you gave, as I understand from our meeting, that would probably be on private property.
Right.
It wouldn't be in the easement way
Correct.
or the right-of-way.
Correct.
And during the meeting that we had earlier in the year, it's my understanding that a lot of private property owners are not allowing National Grid on their property to take these trees down because they don't want to see them removed. So that has been kind of a roadblock, as I understand it, this summer. Some of those trees that you spoke about, we can't touch because we can't get permission from the homeowner. And I would remind people, and again, I hope I'm not talking out of turn here, when we had our discussion about what happened up in the Boxford area, you know, coming into the Ipswich area, had it not been for a private landowner allowing us to go on their property to get to the line, we would not have been able to repair the line because of the mud was so bad during those storms. So we do need to partner with our friends on the private land as well as public land. And I know moving forward, at least through the last few months, the town of Hamilton has partnered very well with the National Grid. And in fact, the town of Hamilton has also done tree clearing on some of their properties to help with National Grid, if I'm not mistaken. So it hasn't just been National Grid clearing these trees and branches, but it's been the town as well, as it has been in the town of Wenham, as I understand it as well. But you need to understand what you just asked about is probably on private property.
And do you have any kind of a social outreach isn't the best kind of thing to say, the word to describe it, but, you know, for areas that you see trees that may be out of the jurisdiction, is there at least a conversation happening with the property owner? I think that would be relevant.
Yes.
You know, and then they can make their decision, no, I don't want you to cut the tree, or, oh, yes, thank you. And take care of it.
I'm making it sound like it's been 100% denial. That's not the
Right.
case, but there has been some isolated cases where they
Correct.
haven't allowed us to go on the property.
And we have the pamphlet, so our forestry supervisor will either go out and speak to the homeowners themselves, or we'll leave a flyer asking them to call us to give us the permission and approval to get on their property.
Right, and I think the worry from some, I've heard from some private landowners is that National Grid's just a bunch of guys with chainsaws, you know, and I'm sure there's you have certified arborists that are looking at the trees and stuff like that, so, you know, reassure people that when you're coming to their house to talk to them about the tree, you're not just gonna cut it down and not think about the options that they have.
Definitely not, no.
The biggest concern that I've had all along is one particular part of Hamilton, and I guess I would call it East Hamilton, which is Blueberry Lane, Forest Street, up in that neck of the woods, continues to see power outages. And most recently, and again, we heard about the squirrel incident, but it seems to me as though every time the wind blows, if I can be frank, we lose electricity up in that area, and then we lose it for hours on end. So I'm a little concerned tonight to hear you say that you did a soup to nuts and everything seems to look good.
Yeah.
Because we continue to have these little outages. In one instance, I heard from a resident who has lost power on and off. It could be for minutes at a time, or it could be for hours at a time, like 23 times in the past year and a half. So that's of concern to us. And I guess I would be asking, on behalf of the citizens that we serve, they need to be able to contact somebody at National Grid. And that's been an issue, where they will call the 1-800 number, they put their name, you know, on a log, and that's the end of the conversation. You've been great with my office, as has Joe, and the town and National Grid have been great. But if I was a constituent, I'm not so sure that I'm being treated as well.
Yeah.
And I think we need to bring that back to National Grid, because it is this specific area that's being hit time and time again. And it just, you know, I laugh about the squirrel, and I don't mean about the death of the squirrel. It's just frustrating to me that it's always in this area of Hamilton that we seem to have this problem. Yes, we have Bay Road issues as well, but not to the extreme that we're seeing up in that area, which is, again, Essex Street, Forest Street, School Street, Bridge Street, Blueberry Lane. So I would just ask, on behalf of the people that we serve, that we take another look at what's happening there, and why do we continue to see these minor, they can be minor,
Right.
but then it seems like when the major ones happen, it's a major event.
Right.
And as we saw back in the, you know, the storm, it was, I know you told us it was 80% trees and 20% the, you know, car accidents, but I just wanted to voice that concern.
You got it. I'll definitely take it back and see if there's anything else we can be doing. Happy to give another look to the equipment as well.
I'm happy to hear that you can somehow have equipment that you can actually close off a section. And I think I would, on behalf of my friends here, urge you to please do your best to get that type of equipment here, because I think it's needed. And we'd like to maybe get an update in a few months of how you're making out with that request.
Absolutely.
I'm hogging the mic, so.
No, you're fabulous.
Allison, would you just mind putting your fancy new mic down a little bit? Perfect.
Most people hear me most of the time.
Just making sure.
No, thank you. I would say, I would ask, is there any reporting that we could show our residents on the outages? And I'm not in the Blueberry Lane area, but the conversations are frequent on Facebook about this, I agree. And I'm in downtown, and I lose it quite a bit, so that but it just does seem that outages overall are more frequent and longer in duration. I mean, is that what National Grid is finding overall? Because it really does, and I'm sure other I don't live in other communities, so I don't know what they're experiencing. But, 10 years ago, we never had these kind of outages for this length. It really does seem like there's a large increase. And I'd love to see, you said there's data. Is there any data that we can look at to share, is it a?
Actually, she forwarded it to us at our meeting.
Yeah.
So I assume we can forward it again.
So
I'll double check.
So are we seeing a huge increase in all communities in the loss?
Or is it mainly just kind of Essex County here?
So I would have to pull the data on that.
Okay.
I didn't do a comparison
That's okay.
between them, but I'm happy to do that to try and find out. I think that's a really good point, and I can definitely take it back and send an update.
It just really, the frequency seems to have changed substantially.
As well as the duration.
Yes, as well as the duration, I agree.
It's
Both
not a
regards.
10 minutes, an hour or something like that. It's, 4 hours plus, it seems, a lot of times.
Right, yeah, it's,
Especially sorry to interrupt. If you just wouldn't mind coming up to the microphone and just saying who you are, just because we're on TV. No, come right on up.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, and I thank you for coming. I thank you guys for putting this together. I do fall in that area by Blueberry Lane, and it's crazy. And I work from home, and it's very impactful when you have no power, no internet, you can't work. And it's been days with hours, days.
Right.
And I did ask in the hallway when we met outside if she could run data to show that we are in fact an outlier, whether it's the grid that's this East Beverly grid, whether it's the town of Hamilton, I don't know what it is, but I have a lot of friends that live in towns that have municipal power. They don't have these problems. And I so appreciate you coming, and I appreciate you for getting the ball rolling on this, but I feel like the town has sort of not supported, not that you haven't supported, but there's nobody fighting for us to get this sort of solved or to get it looked at. And it's frustrating, especially if you work from home and you have young kids, and it's constant. I mean, it's, the kids are in school in August for the squirrel, which is, which it's not a funny situation when you lost power a week before for 5 hours too. So that's sort of what I had requested too, is just that data to show.
I think everybody, I think it's escalated.
Absolutely.
And everybody is now looking at it. So I really appreciate Brad coming forward and bringing it to National Grid, and you coming here. But I think we thought it was following more in the normal world. We have outages. No, and it's definitely seems to be leaving the normal, and that's why we're here tonight.
Right.
I would agree. I mean,
Yeah.
and I appreciate everybody's efforts, and hopefully we can, all sort of, I would love to have a phone number or some way to contact the town to get the ball rolling should it continue to happen. And I'd like to have a plan so that should it happen again this winter, I mean, I'm not fortunate enough to have a generator, that something is done, or there's something, a plan for what's gonna happen next, whether it's these, whatever, grid changes or whatever. But I feel like storms are gonna get worse. We're seeing what's happening with the environment, and, tree trimming, if that's 80%, at some point we have to discuss something else, because
Right, what happens if we trim all the trees and
Right.
we're still in the same
Right.
predicament?
Right. So I sort of think that's where this can't be this one-time conversation. It has to be a continuous conversation.
No, we agree. We totally agree.
Thank you.
Duke.
Duke C. of Essex Street. I've noticed in Beverly, but not here, and I hope it's not happening, where they're putting in new sidewalks, nice cement sidewalks, and they're planting trees right underneath the wires. They're just going to grow up into those wires. So our DPW, or whoever plants our trees, make sure there's no wires over them.
Yeah, I think Tim's been doing a pretty good job if there's any trees planted. And planning board as well, when they're looking at site plans, they're trying to figure out where lines are and where the landscaping is as well to mitigate that stuff.
And unfortunately, last time I looked at it, which was a while ago, our tree budget, I think, is around $30,000 a year. So our tree budget for the town really is to take trees down and to grind out the stumps.
Right.
We don't do any replacement of trees. The only trees we've been replacing were downtown to try and make
Right.
them grow back. But for the most part, the town of Hamilton is not planting any trees, unfortunately.
Correct. Just hasn't been in the budget.
Nope.
So I heard a question, but I didn't hear an answer, and that was moving forward.
Oh, yes.
You know, who can the constituents contact? And I know, and I don't want to put the town manager, you know, on the hot seat here, but we've been having great conversations, and I thank you for that, by the way, on this particular issue. But I would hope that we could have a liaison that we could call here. I don't know if it's the town manager or if it's the DPW director, who's also been very involved.
Tim's got enough to do.
Okay.
I got enough to do, too.
Yeah, you do too.
Actually, while we're here and on air, and hopefully it will get out to some people, you use your cell phone and you type some Hamilton to a specific phone number, and you can get the status. And it's very easy, and it tells you exactly how many
the
properties
outages
are
and-
out and when they believe it will be back. Because when you have no power, it's very hard to get any information. I apologize. I thought you would know, so
Well, while Allison's looking for that, I'm going to raise another topic that is related. We've had an issue over the years with double poles in town. And we oftentimes have Verizon come to us for a new pole location, et cetera. And we've kind of played this dog and cat game of removing the poles. And Verizon's excuse is, well, that's on National Grid, or it's on Comcast, or something like that. And what we're trying to do is get all the parties in the room to say, when are these double poles going to be removed? Because we have many double poles in town. Some are half poles, some are 2 poles next to each other, and they've been for years now, some of them. And I know, and maybe Brad can answer this, a little, not too long ago, we had some legislation on the double pole policy, and it doesn't seem that it's really effective. And it's unsightly, it's dangerous in some places where you're in the sidewalk or not, things like that. So I'm just giving you a heads up that we will be reaching out to, probably not you, but some other rep at National Grid.
It'll be me.
It'll be you?
Yep.
Well, I'm talking to the right person then. So we want to open this dialogue to kind of basically hold you accountable for getting rid of those double poles. I'm not sure what power we have to do that, and you may be able to answer that. But we want to start that process of cleaning up the double poles in town.
So I can tell you, I went out and drove all of Hamilton. So we have a list, and there's a new database that we all use, and the town has access to it. We have access to it. Third-party attachees have access to it. So I pulled the list, and I drove every single pole to see if it was truly a double pole, to see who was actually accountable for it. I'm trying to get the list updated as quickly as possible so that we can all work together. I think, you know, there has been a delay on our part, and I'm happy to rectify that. And, you know, I understand it can be unsightly and it can definitely be a safety hazard. So if there are certain ones that are specifically dangerous that you feel need to be addressed sooner rather than later, I'll give you my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me about it. But I'll do everything I can to help. And I have contacts at Verizon and Comcast. We can all work together. And for the third-party attachees that are also attached there, we should have a log of that as well. So there are a couple of polls that I'm just waiting on who's actually the attachee.
Right.
And then I've been working with Tim Olson on that as well.
I think that's one of the biggest issues, Brad, is that people are doing a lot of this when they put a new pole in or they have to fix a pole because of an accident or something like that. And you know, the first person in line does what they need to do, and then either there's not notification or there's no follow-through with it, and then everyone's kind of waiting for somebody else to do something, and it sits. And so we're trying to, our thought was we had a poll hearing a little while ago, and we almost said no to it because we wanted all the parties in the room to say, well, when's it going to be removed and fixed? You know, but we ended up moving forward with it because we couldn't figure out how to hold them accountable for it, so.
Well, I can assure you that this isn't going to be the last meeting that we have on any of these issues, so within the next few weeks, the three of us can have a conference call and try and bring that, to rectify that. And I just wanted to add also, we've been talking about Blueberry Lane and Forest Street. Chabaco Road is another road that I'd like you to add to your list. They've had 3 outages since August, and again, the amount of time that they were out was pretty harsh. And that's off of Essex Road, so I know it's that feed. Connects to Manchester by the Sea.
Okay.
Just so we can add it to the list.
Yep. You got
Yeah,
it.
they're soon, you're putting some new poles in.
Huh?
They're putting some new poles in out by the landfill there, so.
So the residents interested would text to phone number 64743 the words SUM, S-U-M, space, Hamilton. And if you text to that number, SUM Hamilton, it does bring you back Hamilton, New York, and then Hamilton, Mass, because it doesn't know which one you're designating. And it will give you the estimated restoration time and how many people are out, which can be helpful. And that way, too, you know it's reported, and that, because I think that's a big question for people. Am I the only one out? Or are they aware we're out and what's happening? But you can at least get easily information off of your cell phone if you get cell service.
Right.
And I think that's a really important thing to stress about calling in the outage. Even if you think you're the only one out, you may not be. So, you know, our systems work by pulling all of the data that we get from our customers as well.
Right,
so.
I was just gonna kind of ask that question, like if the neighborhood goes out and 3 people text, but there's 100 people in the neighborhood, you may only think that 3 people are out.
Right, so it's very important that we have people call in the outage, even if you think your neighbor is calling or, you know, somebody down the block.
Right.
So.
And that would help you have more accurate data. It would also help us know that there's more of, help you know there's more of a need for the
Exactly.
repair. Perfect.
Reflect how you respond to the call.
I would say it does.
Yes.
Because if you got a neighborhood of 100 people and 3 people call, there's, you know, 97 other people that are out that didn't call, so they would prioritize that down in the bottom.
But is that really how it's done? I thought it does not, I mean, if I've used it before, and it's not usually just because one person calls in, whatever. It like circulates an entire area.
It shows a whole,
Yeah.
a
It knows
grid.
the grid that
Yeah.
goes
Right.
and how many it affects. It's not
Right.
based on, I could be wrong, but I'm a little seasoned in this.
Yeah.
It's always better to be safe than call it in just in case. I mean, the more data that we have, the better we're able to react to it, yeah.
Squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? Still trying.
Well, thank you. It's all been very helpful. And the
Thank-
unfortunate thing is, I think in a lot of these storms, a lot of healthy trees come down.
Yeah,
And that you can't plan for. They just do.
right. The soil gets saturated enough and then the wind blows and over they go.
Yeah.
When you talk about Beverly, is that a wooded area where that line is? I mean, we're talking about, you know, streets and lines over streets and things of that sort, but when I look back to what happened in the storms last spring, many of these lines were like miles in to the forest, and that's why we couldn't get people out there, because of the mud that happened with the rain.
Right.
Is that what's happening in some cases with the Beverly line?
Does it traverse that kind of area? I don't know specifically. For the most part, our transmission lines would fall in that kind of category through large forested areas. So they're out of the way of view. But I can definitely look into that as well. I don't know off the top of my...
I know, like, again, and I'm using Ipswich as an example, even though it's a municipal, we do get our power from National Grid from another part of the county, if you will. And they had to bring in mud mats to try and get trucks to be able to go over the mud to get to the lines that came down, which were miles away from a major road or a major thoroughfare. So, again, I'm just trying for people to understand why these outages are taking so long to fix.
Right.
Is it geographical? Is it we can't get there because of the mud or the snow or
Right.
things of that sort?
Right.
And if you could get those questions answered and,
Yeah.
back to the town manager, just for our edification.
Got it.
Because again, it seems like this is the area that it's happening, and
Yeah.
and I don't get these complaints in my other communities that have National Grid,
Okay.
to be
Oh, that's
honest.
interesting.
Not to the extreme that we have here.
Right, yeah, no?
I'd also like to suggest that maybe as we get closer to the winter season and the storm season, we do set up some kind of a regular check-in between yourself, Tim, our folks, so that we're prepared and we're ready to push out if something goes wrong, because there is a big storm.
Right.
Not everything's going to be tree-related, right? We may have a big storm, it's justified the power goes out, but let's make sure that we're able to get the information out to people right away to help you get power back on, so.
You got it.
Make sure that's part of our storm prep going forward.
Jeff, any other questions or
I was
comments?
just curious, what percentage did you say were a result of the trees?
So it depends. So like in 2016, 80%, 2017, 91%, 2015 was 33%, but you also had an unusually large number of motor vehicle accidents, which accounted for 48% of outages. And then 2018, we had 65%, and 33% was unknown.
Unknown.
Yeah.
That was a big year last year.
That was last year, yeah.
Only 60% were trees.
65, yeah.
Right, right.
Doesn't make me feel
And
good.
so unknown
The
could
unknown.
be a car accident, it could be equipment failure, it could be.
That would come back as either a motor vehicle accident or equipment failure.
So
I asked
unknown.
for specifics on what an unknown was, and somehow the power just
Just
didn't
didn't go.
get to you guys.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm sweating again.
So, I mean, I noticed most of you, when you're outlining where our power comes in and feeds the different parts of town, it's almost all basically coming from one of three lines coming, originating out of
Right,
Beverly to us.
it's all Beverly.
Ipswich, I know, is a municipal light, is Manchester as well?
No?
No,
No.
Is Essex?
no.
So, couldn't you folks look at a way to maybe backstop us by having the line feed the, do that
Either way.
switch on that side of town? So if we have a tree fall over here coming in out of Beverly,
It comes in the
have
other
a
side.
switch come in the other way, because
Yeah.
these lines go somewhere, they don't dead end.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe backstop us by having a switch at the Essex and Manchester side, so that power can come in from the other side if something goes wrong.
Right.
Coming in out of Beverly.
Well, half the time we lose power on this side, but downtown has power, so, right?
Mhm.
That's the North Beverly line.
That's the North
That's the North
Beverly.
Beverly line
Different
that
line.
comes in.
It's the East Beverly line that gives us the most trouble.
The East Beverly one's about half the town.
Yeah, that seems to be, that's the whole Blueberry area.
Right,
Yeah.
that
exactly.
Right.
large area. So that's a lovely idea.
So that would seem like an area of town that would benefit from having back up from coming in out of Essex and Manchester. So that's, if you could talk to them
Raise
about
the
that,
question. Mm-hmm. For sure.
that might be helpful.
Anything else? Any other comments? Mr. Hill, Allison?
No, thank you very much.
No, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Mr.
very much,
Chairman.
Faith. We'll definitely be in touch.
Sounds good.
We'll have you back again in a couple months, don't worry.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brad, thank you very much for looking
Yeah,
into it.
thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Appreciate it.
Have a great night. Thank you.
You too. Up next, we have special town meeting debrief with our town moderator, Jeff Mueller. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about town meeting, how we think it went overall, anything we think we could improve on. I know after last town meeting, we had a pretty robust discussion as a board about things that we might want to change as far as article orders, automated ticket or teller, tons of things that other towns have used, presentation length, all that kind of stuff. Just if you could give us a brief synopsis of anything you think went really well that we did differently, or we did nothing differently and everything worked out a little bit better, or I think it wasn't a very long meeting. I mean, it was an average meeting for us, I think.
It was under 6 hours.
It was under 6 hours, so
a good
that's
thing
that's
for
a
everybody,
good meeting.
especially me as I stand on.
Yeah.
No, I thought. I'm sorry, Joe.
It was because Joe was
This is because
briefed.
I was
Because
there.
Joe was there, no question. You know, when the Springtown meeting went long, I know some people felt that maybe I should have limited it, but that's really not the moderator's job. People have a way of limiting the discussion by calling the previous question.
Right.
And, you know, I do try from time to time, at least I did last spring, I didn't have to do it this time, to try to make sure there wasn't duplication, but I thought that the discussion, for the most part, was very good, and people moved along. Someone did move the previous question, but you know, people got through the issues, had a chance to discuss what they want to discuss, say what they want to say, and then they voted.
I mean, I think you handled everything well. I mean, we had a few kind of outbursts and stuff like that, but I thought you squashed them really well right off the bat. And I think when people are passionate about an issue, it's tough for some people to kind of settle down about it. And you know, I think you do a good job of telling people if they want to say something, they have to stay within a certain parameter of niceness, and they have to come up to the microphone. And I think you did a really good job of that this town meeting. I think timing, I think it went fairly well. I don't think, there was a couple of people that went longer than their 3 minutes, I think, but I think in the grand scope of things, nothing ran really long, and people were, you know, getting antsy for someone to stop talking or shouting out, I think, other than a couple times where people were using language that people didn't agree with.
The 3-minute rule, it's not a rule, it's a guideline for
Right.
people who come up and speak to something. And, you know, I could say basically you hit your 180 seconds and you're done.
Right.
But that's not always the best way to run a meeting. That's the easy way out. I don't think it's necessarily the courteous way to do it. So the people who went a little bit over, I felt were okay. I think I prodded a couple of people to finish up.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, that's just part of the deal. The longest presentation of a motion that was made was by Mark Johnson in terms of Longmeadow. He and I discussed the length of it before the meeting, and he said, Jeff, I'll try to keep it down to 6 or 7 minutes, which is more than the 5 that's usually provided for a proponent. But given the complexity of the issue and the importance of it to the town, I agreed to the extra 6, you know, the extra few minutes up to 6 or 7. He actually went 10 and a half.
Right.
But the fact is, since it's a big issue and an important issue, I think it's important for the moderator to allow the proponent to put as much information out there originally as possible, so they don't have to keep, so they don't miss things. The idea here is to let people at town meeting know what the deal is on something like that. And there were a lot of things to talk about, so I thought he did a good job in keeping it to the length he did. I think he could have gone on for 20 minutes, quite honestly, but he didn't. Then, of course, the question is, when the discussion starts, you've got a pro here, 10 and a half minutes, and then you have cons come up. And I know Mark wanted to discuss the cons as they came up, but I asked him not to, because otherwise you'd have 10 and a half minutes on pro, and then 3 on con, and then maybe another 3 on pro again,
Right.
then another 3 on con, another 3 on pro again.
Right.
And then what happens if another pro comes up? Do you give a con? So it gets to be very difficult. And so I had him hold off on addressing the cons because, you know, it just wouldn't have made sense otherwise. And that's just the way it worked out.
No, I think even we had a couple of revised motions, and I think that went fairly smoothly as well. I know sometimes in the past it's been a big holdup and the change in the motion and rewording it and, you know, the whole logistics of getting that new motion in there. And I think it went pretty smoothly this time.
Yeah, I think the people who made the amendments were terrific in terms of telling us what they wanted. And then my job and Donna's job is to help them formulate it in a way that makes sense. And actually, Andrea helped us as well. And Donna and Andrea were terrific on helping, making sure that it was framed appropriately so that it would be effective once voted upon and discussed and so forth. So I thought that went pretty well.
Do you think there's any improvements that can be made with the overflow? I don't think it was as big of an issue this time as it has been in the past. I know we go back and forth about this a little bit. Yeah. We need it for the overflow if we've got a big town meeting or we've got people with kids that want to have the kids in there and so they're not disrupting the meeting. But there's that back and forth time and the counts of each and stuff like that. Is there anything you think we can do to improve it, or it kind of is what it is?
You know, from a management standpoint, it's an aggravation to whoever's the moderator, because you've got to go up, you've got to talk to the assistant, then you've got to come back and so forth, and it's difficult. I'm not 100% sure, but every time I went up there, I don't think I saw a single child. They were all adults sitting there. And in the 3 meetings that I've done, I remember one of the 3 where there were 2 children in the overflow room. The other 2 meetings, I don't remember there being any children. I could be wrong, but I don't remember. And of course, I'm not up there all the time. I'm just up there to get the votes. So it is an imposition on all of the people at town meeting for potentially very few. I've erred on the side of keeping it because the thought is that there may be people who come up who do need it, and you don't know until the meeting's over. You just don't know. They might come in late and so forth. So if you look at the amount of time it may cost, it may be, in the course of an entire meeting, a grand total of 10 minutes.
Right.
Is it worth it to have it there for some parents who need it to go up and participate? I think it's a good investment, so I intend to keep it for the spring.
Right, yeah, I don't think it, like you said, 10 minutes or so, that's justifiable in my mind to keep it around for those people that might need it, even though maybe no one's really taking advantage of it, but we want it to be there to have the possibility to be able to do
They might. And Bill Bowler, I gotta single him out. He's been phenomenal. He's done it for me 3 times. And I really, really appreciate his willingness to do that. He's been terrific.
Is there any way to use like walkie-talkies or phone? I mean, the time is you walking all the way over to the cafeteria, getting the information and back, or even a runner, another volunteer that could just get it to you.
I think we talked after ATM about a walkie-talkie or some type of a thing, but.
Well, the problem with the walkie-talkie is that if there's a count, Bill's got to give me the count. He's got to give me a piece of paper. And he was doing that even though there wasn't a particular count on the main floor. He was giving it for the other ones. I know you're not suggesting that a runner would be faster than me because I'm pretty fast and pretty level, right? But I don't think it would make a huge difference.
No?
And I do actually like to be able to speak with Bill or whoever the special town moderator is to make sure that whatever happened was appropriate. The walkie-talkie thing doesn't get you the piece of paper. Right. So I don't think it's, we talked about it. So I had a lot of people calling me and emailing me the week before town meeting, and that was one of the things someone raised, and I explained why we hadn't done it, and he said, yeah, actually, you're right, that wouldn't make sense. So I don't think the walkie-talkie would help.
Anything else you want to add?
I did hear some munchkins running in the hall, so I assumed they were from
I saw a couple
overflow.
of kids running in the hallway, yeah.
I thought it was a great meeting. I know a lot of people were disappointed with the turnout at 375 plus, but that's actually a great.
That's great.
It's a great turnout from our number of registered voters. It's not a great turnout.
Right, I agree.
And I would say to anyone listening at home, there's been a lot of discussion of moving away from town meeting and going to ballot questions. That if anyone feels the need or desire to do so, then that is something they could move forward as an individual citizen.
Correct me
if I'm...
It's
not something the town is looking at.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but any warrant article, someone can make a motion to put it on a ballot, is that?
So this
correct?
is different. This is
this a
the,
different-
the residents were, some residents, as
We're saying
always,
no town meeting at all, just straight to the ballot type of a
straight to
thing.
the ballot, which there is nothing within mass law that allows you to do that, to my knowledge, at
Anybody
this
doing
time.
it, yeah.
There's nothing.
No.
But that's not to say you can't change a law.
Right.
But there is nothing in our government, in our frame of our government, that would allow for such a thing. But this is just some feedback that we're hearing, and that's why I'm saying this is not anything that I personally, and I don't know that the board or the town manager or Jeff are looking at to move forward. There is no framework that we could move anything like that forward. And I think it's unfortunate, but if we go nights, you lose some constituents. If you go days, you lose some constituents. There's not a perfect time to hold town meeting.
Right.
There isn't. And
And the nights were tough because, the meeting would start at 6. And then we would go to 11 or something like that, and then call it and have another night where we might do the same thing, or, get the last couple articles done the next night. But it was always difficult that second night to get quorum.
right, and I
In
think
fact,
it-
we changed the quorum requirement, I think, from, was it 100 and something, and then we changed it down to 75
down.
because of that.
And it's also the fact that it's, our seniors petitioned the town and the selectmen to change it to Saturdays because they found it difficult to come out at night, drive at night. A lot of them didn't feel comfortable doing that. And so it was moved forward by the citizens of the town, and that's when we currently hold them.
Do you think it's worth, and last year we talked about it, looking into the automatic voting?
The devices,
The click
no.
teller thingies?
I personally don't. I don't remember what the cost was. We talked about it last spring, and I remember,
It's around, I want to say, if I remember correctly, it was like $9,000 or $10,000.
I was thinking 10 to 15.
Yeah.
And I don't
Counting-
think it's
counting
gonna slow
them,
us
you
down
know.
this time.
Pardon?
We weren't slowed down by the counting during
No,
this
not
time.
this
Didn't have
time.
to, we didn't
We
use the
didn't have a
tellers
lot of
once
counts,
this
yeah.
this past
We
special
didn't have any
meeting.
counts, did we?
No, we didn't have a single count, which surprised me. Usually have some. There's another level of complexity when you bring them in. Are they accurate?
Right.
Are they all being counted? Is someone's battery dying? This. I mean, it goes on and on. And, there's nothing better than this sometimes in making sure that you know what the count is. I'm not a tech guy. I shy away from technology because I think a lot of the questions sometimes is, can we do it? And if the answer is yes, then they automatically think we should.
Right,
And I don't work that way. The fact that we can do it doesn't mean we should do it.
right. What's the
So
benefit of it,
what's the
really?
real benefit? And do you have other drawbacks from it in terms of people thinking, well, that didn't look like what I thought it would be. That's electronic, I can't see it.
Right.
So,
How would you feel about, and I'm not a proponent of this is just something that was raised, if we had it more of agenda focused so people knew when certain topics were coming to be discussed?
my biggest concern is that there were so many people who left after Long Meadow. We're more than a one-issue town meeting. And it would be great, and I understand people have things to do, commitments, and so I get that. I don't mean to speak bad of any of those people, but there were other important issues on for that town meeting. And it seems that every town meeting we have one big issue, then people who come for that issue then leave, but there are actually other things that need to be decided. It'd be great to have their input on and their participation in. So I wouldn't go that, I mean, quite honestly, before the last one, I was thinking we ought to leave Long Meadow to the last, so everybody will be there for the others.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you're manipulating and all that kind of stuff, so I didn't go in that direction.
And that's the thing, and I think, it's like every time we have a town meeting or even a meeting here, or a school committee meeting, or whatever, there's always people have their kind of hot button issue that they want to wait for, and then they leave afterwards. I'm sure people have 100 different reasons why they leave, but it's kind of the nature of the beast. I don't know, I've thought about different ways to try and thwart that a little bit. Like you said, leave it to the end. but I think it's just the nature of people with the issues, or, you know, you don't know their circumstances. Maybe they had the babysitter, you know, turned into a pumpkin at 12:30 and the issue ended at 12:29 or something like that, or maybe they had something else going on, but.
And it's your warrant. You guys do that, but I think that the articles, my memory is that they have to come in a certain order. Now, it doesn't mean that we
Yeah, there you
can't undo that order at town meeting, but then you're gonna get into this idea of gerrymandering and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
or, you know, is that,
And I know, I think
Standard.
our DPW director, Tim, who lives in Rockport, I think they randomized their warrant articles. I think from what I've heard from him. And I don't know how successful it is. He seems to think it's successful.
but if the goal is to keep people there the whole meeting, randomizing it doesn't do that.
Doesn't do that,
We
right?
have to intentionally change the big one to be at the end, so
Right.
everybody would see it. So,
Right.
I leave that to you guys. It's your warrant.
Well, thank you. I thought it was a great meeting.
Yeah, I think you did a great
thought
job.
It went very well.
I know with myself, I'm always very self-critical of kind of how things go post, but I think you did a great job. I really do.
Well, thank you.
I
Okay.
think you really, you know, even though people will grumble about it, he gave them 4 minutes and it's supposed to be 3. And I totally agree with your statement of, you give them enough time to get their point out. And if it takes a couple minutes extra or something like that, and it seems relevant, you let it go. And I like what you said about, with Mark's presentation on the Long Meadow, that you let him go a little bit longer, but then you kept him from rebutting every single one thing, because then it would have been not so much biased, but unbalanced in the pros and cons. And I think that really shows that you're really thinking about those things. And I don't know if the public have realized that, you know, that they just kind of think that, oh, we just keep hearing this one side of it. But you're actually, while you're kind of taking that tally of the pros and cons as you're standing up there, and make sure that people have equal say.
Well, I'll be honest with you, and I talked to Mark about this afterwards. If I had to do that again, with the motion to move the previous question, before I entertain that motion, if I were to do it again, I would have given Mark 3 minutes to respond.
Yeah.
And I look back on that, I had never been presented with that before. I had never thought about it. And when you're up there making decisions, there's a million things going on.
Right.
That people understand. They're going with Donna and Andrea and me up there. And I didn't think it through. And after it, a woman came up, she was very angry with me. And I said to her, you know, in retrospect, I regret what I did. And I went up to Mark afterwards, and I explained to him, I actually apologized to him. I said, I should have let you speak for another 3 minutes before I entertained the motion. And I felt terrible about it. Once I've done, I can't
Right,
unzip
once it's
it.
done, it's done.
But I will say that Mark was, as he always is, a true gentleman. He said, don't worry about it, wouldn't have made any difference. I understand where you're coming from. It's not easy to do what you do and so forth. So I appreciated his generosity and professionalism. But if I were to do that again, I would allow a person in Mark's shoes to make, if I had told him that I was going to give him time, I would give them some time. And I feel I screwed up on that. But, you know, what are you going to do? I can't undo it. So, but if I make what I feel is a mistake, I have no problem in telling you. I mean, I'm not one of those people who says, you know, I didn't make a mistake if I feel I did. What you see is what you get with me. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. So if I were to do that again, I'd do it differently. So.
Any other comments? Jeff, do you have any?
No, again, just very positive. I've had people come up to me and compliment you and what you've done, and obviously there's a lot of Facebook chatter. That was all extremely positive too, about how you handled the meeting and some of the contentious issues, and kept it very civil and helped people understand how important it is to be courteous. And it's okay to disagree, but to do it agreeably. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And if there's any improvements that we can make or that you need help with, please let us know.
Will do.
We'll do whatever we can for you.
Super. All right, guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks for coming out tonight. All right, up next, we have a open meeting law discussion and complaint filed against the Board of Selectmen with Donna Brewer. And one of our members, Bill Olson, is not here tonight, but I just texted him he is available for a call-in on it. How do you want to work that with that phone?
Got his number, you want to dial him?
Yeah, fine. anything first here, or just right into the
I
number?
think you gotta hit 8.
8 to get out.
8 to get out.
Oh, I dialed it wrong. I apologize, everybody. Take 3. Hi, Bill. You're on the air, just to let you know. And hopefully we got a good connection here. So I just introduced the agenda item, and for those at home, Bill Olson could not be with us tonight, but he was able to conference in for part of the call after another meeting he had, and we have him on the line now. And we're discussing the open meeting law complaint filed against the Board of Selectmen with Donna Brewer, who is up at the podium now, and I'll let you take it away, Donna.
Thank you, Sean. October 3rd, Allison Jenkins filed an open meeting law complaint against the Board of Selectmen on the grounds that 3 members, or a quorum of the board, Bill Olson, Scott Mattern, and Sean Farrell, attended a posted meeting of the Finance Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust, but there was no meeting posted for the Board of Selectmen. The meeting took place on September 5th, 2018. The complaint goes on to say that not only did these members speak at the meeting and express an opinion on matters within the board's jurisdiction, but in addition, one of the board members is alleged to have made a false statement. Bill Olson is a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. When the legislature revamped the open meeting law in 2010, it added a new exemption to the definition of a meeting. A meeting does not include, quote, attendance by a quorum of a public body at a meeting of another public body that has complied with the notice requirements of the open meeting law, so long as the visiting members communicate only by open participation in the meeting on those matters under discussion by the host body and do not deliberate. Unquote. Deliberation is defined under the law as, quote, an oral or written communication through any medium, including electronic mail, between or among a quorum of a public body on any public business within its jurisdiction, unquote. So the question before this board to decide on how to respond to this complaint is whether the visiting members of the Board of Selectmen deliberated under the definition of the law or communicated by open participation such that the open meeting law does not require a posting of the Board of Selectmen as a meeting on the September 5th. The Board of Selectmen members, I did review a draft of the meeting minutes of the meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust and Finance Committee. I don't know if they are finalized yet, but based on the draft, I have studied and researched what I think the Attorney General would do in response to this complaint. The Board of Selectmen members spoke on only 2 topics at the September 5th meeting. The first topic had to do with the funding of Longmeadow, and on that topic, only Bill Olson spoke. So as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, he is permitted leeway as a member of one of the posted host bodies to speak as that member on a matter within the jurisdiction. I don't think there was any violation on that topic. No other board member spoke to that topic. The other topic was the remaining articles on the warrant. And Sean, you and I had a conversation so I could get a little bit more information about your attendance at the meeting and when you spoke on the remaining articles on the warrant. And you had informed me that you spoke about Article 3-2 in response to a question from the Finance Committee.
Correct.
So the communications by the members on the remaining warrant articles were made while the members were sitting as part of the general audience and were directed to the Finance Committee in response to the Finance Committee questions. It does not appear that any of these articles outside of Longmeadow were within the Affordable Housing Trust jurisdiction, and I'm uncertain as to whether, in fact, they were even still in session by the time these discussions occurred. There is no case law directly on point to answer whether this is a violation or not. However, there are a few decisions of the Attorney General that do shed some light on how the Attorney General is likely to consider the complaint. In Open Meeting Law Decision 2013-169, a quorum of the Morrison Farm Committee attended a meeting of the Acton Community Preservation Committee. The Community Preservation Committee meeting was posted. The Farm Committee was not. The chairman of the Farm Committee made a presentation about the farm to the CPC, handed out a brochure, and requested CPC funds for the farm. A fellow committee member spoke in support of the chairman's request. The Attorney General found no violation. Since the two members spoke only by open participation on a matter under discussion by the host body, and the Farm Committee members did not deliberate among themselves, there was no open meeting law violation. In Open Meeting Law Decision 2012-6, all 11 members of the Marlborough City Council attended a posted meeting of the City Council Finance Subcommittee, which was 5 members of the 11-member council. The full council did not post a meeting, even though all 11 were there. All 11 sat in their regular committee seats, like where you guys are sitting now. The AG found a violation. It noted that council members can attend the meeting and listen and participate as members of the audience, but not sit in their regular seats and participate on the same terms as a member of the subcommittee. The AG noted that the violation is avoided if 1, members sit in the audience, 2, ask questions of the host body, 3, participate openly and on the same terms as members of the general public, and 4, limit their participation to matters under discussion by the host body. I believe, based on my review of the minutes and talking with you, Sean, that the 3 members of the Board of Selectmen that attended this posted meeting of these other 2 boards did so within the parameters that the Attorney General has found not to be a violation of the open meeting law. It is up to this board to decide a couple of things. You may agree or disagree with my opinion. So you can decide if you want to conclude that we should respond that there was a violation. If you decide that there was a violation by the 3 members to attend this meeting, then you need to come up with a remedial action, and we will put that in our response. If you decide there was not a violation, then you can just leave the response to be that, or you can say, in the spirit of transparency, even though there was no violation, you're going to create meeting minutes, essentially, of the Board of Selectmen, release those, post those, and perhaps come up with some policy to notify the town manager if you plan to attend a meeting of another public body, so that he can determine if quorum of the Board of Selectmen is planning to attend and can take some kind of proactive action to avoid the appearance of a violation of the open meeting law.
Gotcha.
Finally, I would ask whatever you decide to do, that you would delegate to Joe and to me to coordinate on drafting and responding to the open meeting law complaint, because the response is due in 2 days.
Gotcha. Bill, did you catch all of that on the phone?
I did. So yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with the opinion, and I'm sort of leaning towards the third option, which is, although I don't think a violation was committed, I think that in transparency we should make sure that the perception is that in the future we don't have this perception, so we need to come up with a policy or some sort of guidelines so that we don't have this perception in the future.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I think that night when I attended, I didn't know you were going to be there, and you showed up a bit into the meeting, and I was very careful about really not saying anything. And then I was asked a question, so I answered it, and that was the extent of it. So, Jeff, your thoughts?
I'd like to, Allison, are you gonna?
I have a question. So the affordable.
Tell everybody, by the way, that you recused yourself.
Oh, I recused myself from the discussion as a Board of Selectmen member because I'm the one who made the complaint. So I'm speaking as the complainant at this time. Does it make any difference that the Affordable Housing Trust never opened session never had an open session of the meeting, nor did they close the meeting? Yes, they were posted, I 100% agree. However, they never opened session for an Affordable House Trust meeting, nor did they close it.
The meeting minutes that I have show that the Affordable Housing Trust did not have a quorum until the 8 p.m. arrival of Bill Olson. So they couldn't have opened the meeting until 8 o'clock. But then Bill is the one who's talking about the Longmeadow discussion. So I thought that the meeting was opened at the time it was established.
No, it was never opened. I checked with the minutes taker.
I honestly don't think it would make a difference. Okay. It makes a difference for the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yes.
That is an issue that they should consider to make sure they dot their I's and cross their T's. But for the purpose of whether the Board of Selectmen, 3 members who were there, could speak on an issue, I don't think it makes a difference because of the factors that the Attorney General has outlined that seem to have been met by them.
Perfect. Perfect. And I thank you for looking into it. I will say that I did talk to the minutes taker, and she said, unfortunately, it was a crowded meeting, so she was unable to determine who was speaking throughout a lot of the meeting. So the minutes may not reflect all of the comments taken by individuals. I also apologize for doing this, but I feel it's very important that we do have transparency. I brought this forward without filing a complaint, and no action was taken to investigate it, which is unfortunate. So then I filed the complaint within the time frames allotted. I don't think anyone had malicious intent here in any means. But I think it's important that if a quorum meets and we're at a meeting, that we're posted, we do our due diligence. Bill Olson was correct. He said, you know, I actually appeared, Allison, as I should have, and I'm sorry to put words in your mouth, for the Affordable Housing Trust, so I shouldn't be named in the complaint. You did not believe, which I thought about afterwards, and I would agree with that. But I would also say that we have to be stronger in saying, you know what, we have a quorum, one of us has to leave, or if we haven't posted appropriately. I don't think this, our actions are under scrutiny, and for good reason, and I just think it's very important that we are the top officials in the town, and we're always doing our best to reflect that.
I will say to that end, as Allison mentioned, Bill was there as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. That does not negate his status as a member of the Board of Selectmen, so there was still a quorum of the Board of Selectmen there present, even though Bill had a heightened privilege to speak at the meeting due to his membership on one of the posted bodies.
Jeff, thoughts?
Well, it seems to me that option 3 satisfies kind of what we're trying to achieve here,
right,
which is transparency and maybe a reminder to be extra careful in the future about these situations.
I agree with that. So I guess, and Bill, you kind of already agreed with that, but just checking in, I think the next step forward is to authorize Joe and Donna to submit the kind of first half of your response and then add in the what's the word I'm looking for? Almost a...
The policy?
The policy.
You want to adopt a policy to do what specifically? Is it to notify Joe, or is it to notify you as chair? What would you like the policy to be?
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, how policy seems like it'd be pretty easy to create. It seems like a two-liner, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the discussion right now, Bill, is basically who would you report to that, you know, you going to a meeting and whether there'd be other selectmen going to the meeting.
So if I could offer an opinion, and I'm interested to hear feedback on this opinion. This isn't me saying this is what we should do. This is me offering an opinion. If state law allows you to be there and participate the way you did, but our issue is making sure people know that you're there and participating in that way, the policy could be to inform the town manager in advance when you plan to attend another board or committee's posted meeting.
Yeah.
And when I recognize that there's going to be a quorum of you there, that we direct the chair of that committee to acknowledge that you're there, but not as, you know, to listen and take in information, and only to answer their questions, not to deliberate as members of the Board of Selectmen. Because this is a small town. A lot of the people who are involved are the same people. And if we're not communicating with each other, we're not going to be able to do our best work together. If a board or two boards have a posted meeting, and it's easier for you to attend that meeting to be able to get the information you want or need, or be able to provide information to them to help them in their deliberations. And state law allows you to be there. I don't think that you want to create a policy that is more strict than state law. We just want to be transparent about it.
Yeah, we want to be transparent, but we don't want to make it more cumbersome to negotiate around and have to kind of check in every time, but we need to be very conscious of it, right?
Right. So if you can inform, if you want to establish a policy that requires you to inform my office, myself and Annabella, and we'll be cognizant of the fact that, oh, 3 people have said they want to go to the planning board meeting this week. We better let the planning board chair know, to let people know why they're there.
I'm not opposed to that.
I think it should be the chairman of selectmen, the town manager, and and Annabelle is probably the 3. Makes sense. There's some overlap on the reporting.
Okay. So that
makes sense.
3 of us instead of.
Allison, you had a comment?
I would never be opposed to that.
Yeah.
I just would like to say with the 48 hours requirement, that board members have to be cognizant that they have to give you that notice so that you can post. And I'd also like to just say that if events like this happen in the future and it's not posted and we'd like to attend, we have to not speak, or whatever the law requires, or step out. We do have options if it's not appropriately posted. Thank you.
So do you want Donna and I to work up some language to bring back to you at the next meeting for Board of Selectmen policy on that participation in other meetings?
And since we've got a 2-day deadline here to respond, would we need to have something concrete by then?
No. So if you're taking the position, if you think that your vote tonight will be that to agree that there was no violation, but that you want to develop a policy, that is how I would write the response.
Okay.
The response goes to the Attorney General with a copy to the complainant, and I also send a copy of the complaint to the Attorney General.
Okay.
So I would represent to the Attorney General that the board has voted, if this is what you do, to establish a policy to prevent this from happening.
Okay. Bill, your thoughts on that? Does that work for you?
That works for me. So do we need to make, how many motions do we need to make?
Can we do that in one motion?
Yeah, you can do all that in one motion.
Jeff, you're okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Jeff,
So
if you...
go
ahead.
Yes, who wants to make the motion?
Jeff, would you mind making it, since Bill and I are named, and I don't want to make a conflict of it, so if you could...
I move that the board ask the town manager and legal counsel to draft a response to the Attorney General stating that we find that there was no violation of the open meeting law, but in consideration of transparency, the board will put together a policy for future reference.
Nicely said.
Yeah, perfect, Jeff.
Okay.
Perfect.
Bill, do I hear a second from you?
Second, that was well said.
Yeah, well said. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call vote when there's
Yes, sounds
somebody
good.
on remote participation.
Jeff Hubbard, aye.
Sean Farrell, aye.
William Olson, aye.
Perfect. Anything else, Donna?
No, that's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Enjoy your drive.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be, if she's okay with it, that's fine with me. In fact, I was hoping she kind of would.
Thank you.
Rope her in. All right. Let's talk budget calendar.
You just want to put on the record that Bill is no longer.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'll put on the record here that Bill Olson is no longer with us via telephone conference. And up next, we have our fiscal year 2020 budget calendar with the town manager and our finance director, Marissa Batista. Thank you for being so patient. And I think, did you give everybody a copy of the
Yeah, it should be
proposed
in your
calendar?
packet. It should be in your packet on your desk, 'cause it didn't get emailed to you because it got a slight update today. Marissa and I looked at the budget calendar that was developed in draft, or developed by the interim town manager, Robin Crosby, last year, I think with all of your participation and help.
Yeah.
Understanding there's been, a few changes and, some minor things, and we got some additional information from the superintendent of schools today at a meeting and about that Marissa and I attended with Peter Lombardi, and to just talk about their timeline and their calendar. So we added a couple of dates to that, and what you have in front of you should be an amended, and the new date on it says October 22nd. So you can ignore the first
Yeah, I was gonna
2
say,
months.
skip ahead to the next
Skip ahead
page.
skip ahead to the next page, and this just kind of outlines a few high points. I'll let Marissa kind of take it over from here.
And I'll just
If you guys have
interrupt
questions.
Marissa before she even starts here, that if you notice when you look at November there, Monday, November 15th, or sorry, 5th,
Yep.
at our next Board of Selectmen meeting, we'll have a, most likely a joint FinCom meeting to talk about the first quarter report. Marissa, you're up.
All right, thank you. So if we start on November, I think that the information here is that we're gonna, the town manager is gonna provide guidelines once he has guidelines from the board and the FinCom as far as the budget for fiscal year 20, and that information will be provided to department heads, and department heads will have till Monday, November 19th, to enter all the information into Munis. So pretty much to put their budgets together and enter them into Munis. And then it will give us a couple of weeks to put it all together. And we had, one of the changes that we made from the original calendar was to have our budget meetings instead of the week of December 3rd to be the following week, so the week of December 10th. And those are the meetings that we normally have with the town manager, finance director, and the FinCom liaison, and of course the department head. And then from there, the other change that was made was instead of December 3rd, because we wanted to wait until we had our budget meetings with department heads and the FinCom liaison. So we switched from December 3rd to December 17th to have the information on revenue estimates and the budget progress with the Board of Selectmen.
And that gives you enough time to get everything together, hopefully. Yeah.
One would hope. Yeah. And so then the next date would be, we switch from January 7th to January 22nd as far as having an actual budget estimate due from the town manager to the board.
Okay. In similar format to last year? Or have we changed stuff with it a little bit?
We haven't changed
Kind of
it.
ever improving, right? I mean, last year's was a lot more robust and a lot nicer layout and well organized. More of the same, but
Yeah.
new and improved.
We're trying. We would like to have a better presentation of the budget, and that's something that we've actually been working on. I don't know if you recall, but our community compact grant was to have a budget document and the financial policies. So unfortunately, they're really, really behind on our budget document. I have contacted the lady over at Division of Local Services to see if she could actually just give us some type of a draft. I'll be honest with you, I'm short, I'm down one person in my office, and I would hate to start putting a budget document together if they already had a draft.
Right.
It would be like double effort,
right,
really.
exactly.
So I had contacted them and to see if I could get a draft. She said maybe in a couple of weeks. It's actually been 3 or 4 weeks now, and I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Is there any kind of nicer pressure we could put on them, or is it we're kind
I
of
will,
tied to?
Give her another call, and I just, at this point, I just want her to at least let me know, are we actually going to have some type of draft that we can work with, or are you telling me that it's not going to happen for this budget season, and then see what we can put together. I mean, those documents are like extensive, and they're normally like 200 pages documents, so hopefully we can do a little better than we did last year. Whether we're going to have a complete budget document the way we want it, I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be the year.
Fingers crossed, but.
Yes.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
So one, I'm just reading through this quickly, but I don't see where we vote, the Board of Selectmen votes to put any questions on the ballot for.
I saw something about they're due to the town manager on the 14th
of
January.
The ballot questions?
No, not the ballots, but just ATM articles. But you're talking ballot questions for
So we
last year when we didn't take it to the ballot, exactly.
Yes, I think it should be on there, and if we don't have any to go there, that's fine, but it's a reminder that we need to vote our ballot questions. And then.
Do you remember the date by chance?
I don't remember how many days.
We had an issue last year when Allison had a thought that we should have went to the ballot with something, and the date had passed, and maybe Donna can even speak to it.
You need to vote to put things on the ballot at least 35 days before the election, actually well before that, because the ballot has to be finalized and absentee ballots become available 35 days before the election.
So I agree, that should be part of the calendar.
Should be part. We may not have any.
Right. No, I think this is all this may not be set in stone, but I think the more information we can put on here with dates, the better off we are when we're referring back to stuff, or we don't miss dates on things, for sure.
This one just confuses me, and it could be me not understanding it, but on Monday, February 25th, budget recommendations from the Board of Selectmen due to the Finance Committee. Wouldn't it usually be the Finance Committee's recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on the?
On the end of February there.
Yep.
The first, or I should say the second Monday, the 25th, budget recommendations from Board of Selectmen due to Finance Committee. I think usually it's the other way around.
So, I guess this is a good time for me to ask, kind of what has your past process been done? I mean, Finance Committee is usually advisory to the town meeting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They liaise to the town departments and the town manager and to the Board of Selectmen, but they make recommendations and suggestions to the town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that kind of caught me a little off guard was your process for putting the warrant together, and the lack of input in some ways and the too much input in other ways of the Finance Committee. One of the things that I've seen done in several other communities, including Winter before they switched their form of town government, and the town of Swampscott where I live, you guys organize the warrant. You close the warrant and you post what the warrant is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the FinCom should provide a book of recommendations to that warrant.
Mm-hmm.
that would give them a more robust role in the participatory nature of what they do. And it would, you know, kind of maybe cut out some of this need for, you know, version 15 of the STM warrant, and then you know, 9 more versions of the warrant script afterwards. I'd like us to look at maybe revising how we do that. It would give them a more active role in the actual part of the job that's important to them, which is making their recommendations to the town meeting, and kind of maybe cut down on some of all the back and forth and people feeling like they were left out of conversations or not left out of conversations.
I agree with what you're saying, but that's why I'm confused. Why are the selectmen making recommendations on the budget to the finance committee?
The selectmen recommend the budget through me and to the town meeting, or correct? Don, am I saying that right? Or how do you correct me if my language is wrong? But it's our budget. We go to town meeting to get it approved. They make recommendations on whether or not to approve parts of it.
So under the special act, the budget is actually your budget.
Right.
So you put it together and...
It's Joe's budget.
It's Joe's budget, yeah.
Not to say it's our budget.
Yeah,
it's
no,
Joe's
sorry, not the
budget,
Board
right.
of Selectmen, but it is Joe's budget. You put it together, Joe, with input from department heads, and at least historically, it's been with the Finance Committee. And I believe under the special act, the Finance Committee is still has a role, and under our bylaw still has a role to make recommendations to you as to what they want to see in the budget, to see what support or not that they will give to the town meeting when these items come up for discussion. So it's not, you're right, in no way is it the FinCom's budget.
But not to cut them out, I think they have a really important role that I want to have highlighted, included in the process. But I'm just trying to figure out if there's a cleaner way to do it.
I like the idea of the recommendations book kind of thing, or a supplement to the warrant.
I know in the past what has happened is oftentimes, honestly, the Finance Committee has not voted on what their recommendations are going to be to town meeting until the last minute. So their process is going to have to start a lot earlier if they're going to be giving their recommendations.
I would say historically, I've been in town now for 16 or so years, and very often the warrant will say, you know, even Board of Selectmen or Finance Committee will make a recommendation at town meeting when the warrant's printed. And that's, what, a couple weeks ahead of time, so.
So maybe what we could do is have a meeting sooner than later with the FinCom to see how we want to.
How about Monday, November 5th?
Yeah, to roll it out.
I mean, I think it's...
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about it, because
we work as a team to do
we've
this?
talked about it in the past a little bit, and there's been a little bit of momentum in it, but we haven't ever really finalized something. We've got the calendar, which Marissa's put together and stuff like that, and that's helped a lot with the budgeting cycle and stuff. But I think there's
helped. I don't want to take the credit.
Helped.
That was
Marissa
I helped.
But I think, you know, this is all a step in the right direction. It's just pushing it that little bit further that we need to really be successful.
And I mean, in the very short time I've been here, I've heard loud and clear from the FinCom that they want to, you know, be more involved, and I think that they should be. I don't want to minimize their role, but it seems to be a tension that doesn't need to exist in terms of how all this stuff is getting put together. You guys set the warrant, I create the budget, they definitely make recommendations on all that stuff, and the town meeting makes the final decision. There's a kind of pretty much black and white what everybody's lanes are, and I want everybody to participate in their roles. So that when we get to town meeting floor, I could actually envision this process being a lot more collaborative, so that when we get to town meeting floor, hopefully, you know, we're not having 6-hour town meetings.
The other,
Hey, I'm an optimist.
Yeah. I know we can't add a specific deadline, but I would like to add some type of notice of when we would like to see citizens petitions.
I was just going to bring that up.
So that that they have to come in before we close the warrant or something.
We need the language completed and whatever information, all that kind of stuff.
So citizens petitions due to
And
or
there,
the selectmen, town manager, whatever we want to
Right.
say, by,
I think in the past, well, since we kind of did the citizens petition policy and made it, I mean, not that it wasn't readily available, but now it's a lot more easier for people to get to. It's been in charge of the moderator to kind of collect all that stuff and then work with the town manager. So I would say it kind
oh,
of
that's a
sticks
great
to that.
idea, yeah.
But, you know, maybe we just got to make it a lot more known when and announce citizens petitions. If you have one, it has to be in by such and such a date. And it's going to depend on when town meeting is too, because of the posting period and stuff, right,
Right.
for all the legal stuff. Is that correct, Donna? You know, as long as they've got their signatures and their language.
The petitions and the certification of the signatures will have to occur before the warrant closes.
Right.
Is there a date for when the warrant closes in here?
You've
I
got to
would
have it
assume so.
posted at least 14 days before the meeting.
We've toyed with a hard and fast stop on that, and it's never quite worked for us. We've had great thoughts of having a hard and fast date for when the warrant closes, but it
Well,
seems
it's
like every time we.
published on March 12th.
Right.
So if it's published on March
It's
12th,
February 25th. That's the date that it's on the calendar for the
Date on the
Board of
calendar.
Selectmen to vote to close the warrant. And I also just noticed that on March 7th is the last date to give town clerk written notice of any question to be placed on the ballot.
What was that
oh,
date?
thank you.
March 7th.
March 7th.
Oh, I see it there. Okay, yep.
Perfect.
So that should precede
It should,
February 25th then.
right, since we're closing the warrant.
And this is just a personal thing, you feel free to ignore me, but it's kind of a busy calendar, which I think is fabulous, so we have it all listed. If we could delete the bullets of town hall's open days. It's just a personal preference, because I'm just trying to,
Where,
I'm all for it.
oh, you're talking about the town hall hours and all
Closed
that
Memorial
stuff in
Day,
there?
town hall open.
so it seems to be what's happening is you list when the town hall is closed, which I think is important. And then the following day after each time the town hall is
Is
closed.
when it's open.
When it's open, and
Right.
I don't know.
So we just list the closed days?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, I can
fine.
we can clean that up pretty quickly. Yeah,
That's an easy strike there.
yep.
I think that would be great. Again, you don't have to, I'm trying to make it easier to read, so like for Monday, February 25th, you have a number of different items that are due under that date. I think I would list the date once, and then
And just
list all the items
bullet 'em, yeah.
underneath it.
Personally, what I think it would actually be easier is to actually have a calendar
I
that's
agree
just
with you.
budget.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, this was, I mean, again, was
This
put
is all
together by the
encompassing.
interim town manager, and it was put together all in one. I
Yep.
think when people look at this, there's a lot of information. There's Board of Selectmen meetings that
Mm-hmm.
have nothing to do with the
Yep.
budget, and what,
Yes.
mine's highlighted because I'm looking at budget dates.
Yep.
So
Okay.
it's actually, it would be easier to read, but that's
I would
my personal
Totally be in
opinion.
favor with that.
Yeah, I was hesitant to make those kind of changes without knowing what kind of direction you gave
If-
Robin when
Yes,
she made
perfect.
Okay
it.
with
No
streamlining, yeah.
problems. So I think that's perfect. And then as far as other changes, I think this all looks great. I'd love the opportunity to read through it, and then I
Oh, yeah.
can set, who should, or who could, should I send feedback to Marissa or to you, Joe?
Send it to me,
Okay, perfect.
please.
And I think it looks great. I think it's really great that we're having it done so early.
Well, that's the intent. Let's,
That's the intent.
best laid plans.
Yes.
I'm just happy, I mean, I'm just happy we have a calendar. I mean, in the past, we haven't done this before. I mean, this is kind of our second go-around of trying to put a calendar together. It just makes it so much easier. You're never like, oh, what's supposed to be going on, you know? So this
I
is
agree.
very helpful.
Great.
We've had a calendar in the past.
We
just
have.
never really.
I agree with you.
Never filled it,
calendar, but
fill in
we've-
enough of the blanks, I
Right,
think.
exactly.
Yeah.
We've always had,
I think we always end up at the last minute, and it's like, okay, the warrant needs to go to the printer. We still don't have recommendations, and we're always like against
Right.
our deadlines.
Yeah, but this
Yeah.
could be nothing but helpful for all the boards and committees involved to be able to look at this and say, oh, we have this coming up in the next week, we have this coming up in the next month, we have to get ready for this, and it helps with agendas and everything.
Yeah, I think streamlining this, and I'm even looking at this, and it says, Finance Committee, March 20th. Well, we don't know what the agenda is for that meeting, and obviously, most things Finance Committee are gonna revolve around, but pulling that out as an attachment is separate, like all Finance Committees meetings are scheduled for, these are the dates currently scheduled, right?
Right.
We can add in as they add in.
Right.
Same thing with the Board of Selectmen's meeting schedule. These are on the board, so we can look and say, okay, we've got these items coming up on February 4th. Oh, no, that's the Selectmen's. Well, we got this item coming up on February 5th. The next Selectmen's meeting to be able to act on that is February 19th.
Right. Right.
The other thing that we may want to add, because it's been a problem in the past, is availability of the school. So something that says, so in July, I think we need to make sure that the date we want is available in the school for September or October. Because they can.
You're talking about town meetings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we've often had the shuffle in the past with the schools, with events going on. And we've had pretty much a set date for ATM.
Yep.
But there's been times where they go, oh, well, we've booked it for the play, or there's something else. And so that dialogue needs to be a little bit more concise.
Right, so that's something I can bring up with, yeah. I will say that from the meeting we had with Mike and Jeff this morning, we do have, not dates, hard and fast dates, but it does note, joint meetings with the FinComs and the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District in both the end of November and then again at the end of February.
No, I agree with
So,
that. What they
but-
did was it was things like, we would say, all right, we're gonna have annual town meeting on April 1st, and they would say, at the high school, and they would say, I'm terribly sorry, but we have SATs that day, you can't. That's the conflict, that we're not asking that in enough time so that,
All right, so we talked about that this morning. It seemed from the brief conversation we had around that this morning that both us and Wenham are planning April 6th this year, the first Saturday in April, and Mike didn't indicate that there was anything wrong with that date. So I'll circle back to him and confirm that there's nothing wrong with that date.
Yeah, we confirm.
And then what I would like to do is ask him if he can give us an idea. If you guys have a special town meeting every year, why don't we just pick a day? I know a lot of people felt like this year's was way earlier than you usually do it. So why don't we pick a day that you all think is reasonable, a Saturday? And we ask them if we can have that date next October or November, whenever it is.
Right.
And try and get it into their calendar now. And then that gives us plenty of time if something does come up, because you haven't established a past practice. At least with special town meeting, with annual town meeting, because it's the first Saturday of every month, of every April, right? So.
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
I
makes it easy for him.
agree with you.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, if you add it to your calendar, so,
Yeah.
and when Marissa leaves, hopefully never in the future, it's actually documented, so then the next person can follow
Pick up,
this
right.
same line of thinking, you know what I mean? That's all I'm thinking. But thank you.
Yep. Any other highlights?
No other changes that I can think of. So all the other dates, as far as when the warrant will be sent to the printer, when it closes, it's all the same dates that we had on the previous one. And everything was kind of put together based on having the annual town meeting April 6th. So you kind of work backwards.
Yep, thank you.
Great.
I have a significant amount of reading.
Yes, you do.
By Thursday, nonetheless.
Right. All right, if there's nothing else about the calendar, we'll move on to the second reading of our capital and reserves policies with Marissa as well.
Okay, so this is our second read. I actually met with the FinCom last Wednesday, and we went through the capital planning and the financial reserves policies. They suggested a couple of changes, which the versions that you have are already incorporate the changes from the FinCom. and they approved both policies on that meeting. Again, if you need me to read through them, but I will just highlight what the changes were.
Yeah, that would be great.
So if we start with the capital planning, under Section 8, definition of a capital improvement, let's see. The second sentence sentence that starts for budgeting purposes, any asset or project representing 25% or more of a department's operating budget, and this section is what got added, with a useful life of 5 or more years, should be considered a capital improvement regardless of its cost. That was one of the changes. On the second page, under evaluation of capital projects, item 9, we added the word environmental. And
Oh, item 9, okay. See.
yep, environmental under item 9. And then under section E, capital financing, the sentence that starts with, the town will strive to maintain 3% of the general fund operating budget net of debt on capital investment allocations, and this section was added, with any excess going into the capital stabilization fund. So in other words, meaning if we allocate 3% of our general operating budget to capital, but we determined that on that particular year we don't need 3%, any amount over our capital ask would be transferred to a capital stabilization fund, which we actually don't have yet.
I was just going to
That's
say,
what-
we
that's what
don't have
confused me.
one, so.
Yes, we do not.
But
Okay.
we'll be planning to ask for that.
Yeah, and that's actually on our financial reserves to create a capital stabilization. But we don't have one yet, but they would like to add that if we don't happen to need that 3%,
So for instance,
the difference would go into the capital stabilization.
So can I just try to, for the people at home who aren't looking at this, so for instance, if the policy is 3% of general operating net of debt, then we only in a given year spend 2% or are asking for 2% for capital projects, the other 1% would go right into the capital stabilization fund.
Correct.
Right.
Those were the only changes to the capital planning policy. And like I said, they took a vote and they accepted.
Actually, I like that one. I like that last change.
Yeah.
Do we currently, I'm looking down here on B, inventory, and I know we have somewhat of a inventory of stuff. Do we have a robust inventory of all these capital assets, dates built, acquired, last improved, original costs, all this stuff, etc.?
Okay.
Yes,
FinCom
ma'am.
had the same question.
Yeah.
So do we have a complete inventory? I can't say that for sure. What I do have is, for financial purposes, I do have a capital, we actually have a capital asset software. Mm-hmm. But our policy in the past has been of anything that was over $5,000 that would meet our threshold of a capital asset, and we would add it to our list of assets in our capital software, and that would be reported on our financial statement. Exactly.
Whatever matrix it was, yeah.
Absolutely. So it does have some of this information. So when it was acquired, when it was built, the cost, what the useful life is, the depreciation, yes. Does it have
all of that stuff?
Condition.
Right.
Expected or scheduled replacement or expansion dates? No.
Right.
And that's why we actually changed this section a little bit to say that the department heads would have to be
Annually
very
updated.
involved with the finance director and the town manager to be able to provide us with that information. There would be no way that I would be able to know when something needs to be replaced in the DPW department. So I think that there are some departments, they do have a detailed inventory list. I know I've seen an inventory list on our IT equipment. I don't know if we have one that it's town-wide.
Right.
But I know that I do have the capital assets that reach the $5,000 threshold that we need for financial statements purposes, and that I do keep. I might need to work with our new town manager as far as how we're going to implement this, because we are now saying it's $25,000, which means what I'm going to keep in our capital software is anything over $25,000. So anything less than $25,000, it's not going to.
Right. That's my worry, is that, you know, the amount of information here that we don't currently have or we may currently have, and the demand on staff to either retro and then I don't think moving forward would be that difficult, but then my worry is that $5,000 to $25,000 gets lost in the mix as far as assets and stuff like that, depreciation, replacement costs of a vehicle or something like that would be under the $25,000 if we had something like that.
We have any vehicles under 25,000, but I mean, certainly there's going to be equipment and stuff that's still not going to need to be replaced on a schedule.
Right.
That will not be capital in nature, but operation.
Be operational, true.
You know, we're going to need to develop, you know, complete lists of what our assets are anyway and what their conditions are. Right. So we'll build out. We'll start with the information you have and develop a
right. I think part of this is rollout, right? That's another big part of all these policies to our boards and committees and to town staff, and I think this part of the inventory is a pretty key one, so we can assess where we are, where we're going, and for town staff, department heads and stuff to be working on this diligently from now on.
One thing that I do at the end of the year is I do send out the list of our capital assets to all department heads to review the equipment that is listed on the prior year close, so that they can let me know. Additions, not so much, because I mean, we pay the bills. I run a report and I can see all the purchases, but still, I just always want to make sure that department heads do review that list and to let me know if there's any equipment that no longer exists, or so that we can have any retirements on those assets. So that has been done in the past. Like I said, I think I would be mostly concerned on smaller pieces of equipment. And I'm not to say that, you know, there might be, like I said, I think some departments do have a list of all of their equipment. Whether it's all of them or not, I can't answer that question right now.
Anything else from you, Allison? Jeff?
No.
I think that's good. Okay.
So the equipment we're getting rid of, something for afterwards, but I don't think we have do we have a surplus policy?
I don't know if we do. I
don't know we've surplused anything since I've been a selectman.
We were actually just talking about that with the fire chief.
I was going to say, we've done the fire trucks.
Yeah, so we were talking about that, whether we actually have a written policy. I don't know.
Okay, we'd only need it for under 10 grand. Over 10,000, I think, is the law. So it would only be items under 10.
Items under 10, you said?
I believe, yes. Over 10 follows the law.
I have a recollection that we did put together a surplus property policy for items under $10,000, because that's within the Board of Selectmen's authority, after we had an issue with some DPW surplus materials.
Okay.
And this is going back years, so finding it will be the issue.
Okay.
Joe.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's talk about financial reserves next.
Well, do we have to, I'm sorry.
Do you want to make a motion on each one individually? Do you want to make
I would do it individually.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion if you want to make it.
I make a motion that we vote to approve the capital policy presented by the finance director tonight.
Jeff?
Second, sorry.
That's okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. All right, financial reserves policy.
This one will be very easy. There was only one change. It's actually on the second page. It's under general stabilization. The sentence starts with, the town will annually appropriate a minimum of $125,000. So initially it was 3%, which had changed it to 125 to provide us a little more flexibility, thinking that 3% could be a bit high at some budget years. So we wanted to say it was a minimum, but we did change it to a number, and the finance committee felt that since everything else is based on percentages, that they will feel more comfortable if that was also a percentage. So that now says appropriate a minimum of one half.
Okay.
Where is that again? I'm sorry, I'm lost.
Second page under general stabilization,
Half of a percentage.
where it had,
General
well, it
fund.
used to have 125,000 in there.
Okay.
So they wanted to change that
To
to
half
a
a percent.
percentage, to half a
And
percent.
that's a 0.5% until the target minimum balance is met.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That was really the only change there.
And then do we currently, I'm looking at the special purpose stabilization funds, and we have basically one of these for the rec fields.
Yes.
And we haven't annually reviewed these stabilization funds. And I'm seeing here, town annual review the need to appropriate to this fund in any future special purpose, et cetera. And then right in there, town should consider establishing a capital stabilization fund appropriate annually to this fund. I would assume, since we're talking in our capital policies in here, that our capital stabilization fund is one of the things that we'll be talking about very shortly in establishing that, so we don't have a policy that says something that we don't
Yeah.
have.
Hopefully, I would say that we would present it for town meeting.
Yeah, the town meeting, I think we'll have to establish that, Donna, right? Town meeting has to establish
Yeah.
that fund, and we'll be presenting, we're going to recommend to you
Right.
that you present a warrant article that creates the fund and then appropriates money into
Right.
it.
And then as far as our annual review of those funds, I would assume it would be at annual town meeting. And would it be, I guess the review of that, what would that entail at a town meeting? Like, would it just be saying, we have this fund, it has this in it, we're still justifying that we need this fund?
I think that the review
would
of
the-
those funds would, Donna can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that you wouldn't necessarily need to bring this up to town meeting. It would be more
Just an
during
annual
our
review.
budget season, budget meetings, we would discuss, okay, we do have these stabilization funds, and these are the purposes. Is there any talk that we're going to be going, we're going to have this project go forward? Do we need to appropriate more funds into it? And then we would actually, if that would be the case, then we would bring an article to town meeting.
Okay, that makes
but
sense. I guess
those
my misunderstanding, sorry to interrupt, was where it says the town will annually review the need to appropriate this fund. I was thinking that meant
Town, yes,
town
yeah,
meeting, is how I interpreted it.
yeah.
I don't think it
No.
needs to, no.
But
So during the, once you reach the threshold that you want in any one of these funds, you just don't recommend,
Putting more
appropriating
into
money
it,
into
right.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. I just said, maybe I just misinterpreted that the town was the town meeting.
Yeah, when they refer to the town, in these policies, they refer more to,
The body, the general.
Board of Selectmen, town manager as part of the budget discussions, then you would review and recommend any transfers into those particular stabilization funds.
And then I just have another question on
Yes.
in the C, retained earnings. The last sentence there, to maintain the target reserve level for the enterprise fund requires the Board of Selectmen to periodic review and when necessary adjust user rates. And my question would be more trying to Joe and Marissa yourself. The periodically review of that, is there a cadence that we would want to establish on that review? I know it says periodically, which can be pretty varied, but we had a period of a long time when we didn't adjust water rates, and it kind of came back to bite us in the butt a little bit. And our rates went up, and we added some fee for the maintenance of the water lines and stuff like that. So I just don't want to have a long time go by before we review those water rates again. I was wondering if there was any kind of cadence that you might recommend on that periodical review of the enterprise fund.
I think that's a town policy. I've seen towns that actually do a review of the water rates on an annual basis.
I was just going to say, we should be reviewing our water rates on an annual basis. Lots of different things drive what the rate has to be. The cost of the system is the key thing, right?
Yeah.
The amount of money that we spend on maintaining the system, what the cost of the different forms of fuel and energy are that we use to run the plant, what kind of upgrades we decide to make. But all those things are also impacted by the amount of water that gets used, right? So if you have a budget that's X million dollars for water, and you're assuming that you're going to meet that with a rate of X,
right?
Y, but you don't get enough usage, that rate has to change.
Right.
Annually.
Right, you have to adjust it to
because you still have to meet the budget that you appropriate.
Right.
So you should be evaluating the water rate on an annual basis. And so far you've been okay. You've still got money going into retained earnings and stuff, so you're not running short. But you got to.
The only thing that I would
we have a meeting with Marissa every year to assess that.
Actually, I think it's
You're the water commissioners?
Yes.
So, but you oversee the books for the water department, so we should be reviewing
yes,
that
I do. Yes, obviously. But Tim Olson should also be part of it as well. The only concern that I would have is I haven't been here long enough, but I've heard rumors that maybe 2-3 years ago that the water rates were increased. And that was with a promise that the rates would not increase for a certain number of years.
That's right.
Is that correct?
And the idea was to go higher than, we raised them higher than needed, but with the idea that we would build a reserve balance.
And that's what we're doing right now with
And
retained
be
earnings.
able to go 4 or 5 years till we had to adjust it again. You're right.
Okay. I wasn't here for that, but I have heard some comments on that.
So, I mean, I guess I wonder, I mean, it's saying periodically, I'm fine with leaving it in there, but I wonder if we should review it annually, even if, like, to Jeff, your point, and I remember that, all those talks about the water rate increase, and we'd said we'd kind of put a moratorium on it for a while until we actually needed to raise it to make the enterprise. I wonder if we should say annual review, even if we're not going to raise the rate over these next handful of years, because I think it's something that we should be doing. And to your point, I think it seems like an annual thing instead of, I don't want to go 3 or 5 years and then I don't want to spike the rate again. I mean, there was almost 20 years, I think, before we changed the rate last time, and that we were way in arrears in it.
And the other thing is that, I mean, if you do that, then you're always reacting to an emergency situation.
Right.
And then you don't feel like you've had the benefit of actually analyzing, why you're making the change. And it kind of drives down people's faith that we know what we're doing and that we're doing it the right way.
Right.
So if we're reviewing it annually, even if we're not going to, for another 2 or 3 years, adjust the rate because we made that promise, that at least gives us the ability to start to forecast, okay, well, if we're going to keep the rate the same because we said we would, now this year we're anticipating, now we're bumping up against our budget, we're going to have less ability to put some more money into reserves. We just want you to know that.
Right.
So that we're not coming back in 3 years and all of a sudden it's an emergency and you didn't
Right.
know about it.
Yeah, I agree.
The
When is a typical, is there a kind of a water rate season? If that makes any sense. Is there a time, like I'm thinking I think at some point in the near future we have a meeting where we talk about water liens and stuff like that. Would that be a good time to review stuff like that?
Well, that actually brings up, I know we're got a joint meeting with FinCom in the next meeting, but I know that I've got a request from Tim for you to remove the water ban too, so that's gonna come up in your next meeting. That just kind of came in between meetings and I didn't have time to get it on your agenda for this meeting. I don't know what the water season would be here in MWRA towns. It's the summer. Right. You have a water ban on her in the summer, so you don't have a water season as that goes. Right. So I think I'd want to hear from Tim on that. We can get.
Yeah, I think that's information that can follow. But I think I would like to change that periodically to annually.
Yeah.
If
The only other
anybody's-
thing that I'd like to add is we did build up a reserve, but, and we still have a decent amount in retained earnings. However, in the last 2 budget years, we have used retained earnings to balance
Right.
the budget. Small amounts. I think last year was $35,000. The prior year was
yeah.
$20,000, around that. But we have used retained earnings to be able to balance the budget. Yeah, and I think the buildup of the reserves was in anticipation of having the big water distribution project and the water treatment plant. So, I mean, those are, I think, soon to be wrapped up. So, but that's again a discussion to have with Tim.
Is anybody okay with changing that language
Yeah.
to annually?
Makes
Allison?
sense.
It makes sense to me now, but I just have a question. Does this mean you now have to bring it back to the FinCom to revote? Or we can just vote it in? Well, we're making it more stringent, not less, so we.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they'll be fine with that.
I think they would be okay with that.
Okay, then I make a motion that we accept the reserves policy with the change from periodic to annual.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
I just have one more question for
Yes.
you. On the overlay surplus, do you know our current overlay amount?
300,000, more or less.
More or
Not
less.
exact. I want to say
Minus.
330,
Okay,
around there.
that's it. Any other questions? Anything else?
No? Thanks.
No.
Marissa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marissa,
Thank
for all your
you.
hard work. Hopefully we get something back on our budget packet. Fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have second reading of updated social media policies with the town manager. So I have, at least I got in my packet,
You have 3 now instead of 2.
we have 3 instead of 2.
So the first 2 are largely the ones that we brought to you at the last meeting, including a change that was recommended by Ms. Jenkins on the policy for appointed and elected board and committee members. I think this reflects the language that Allison had asked us. And again, I apologize for the mention of a town charter. Again,
That's all right.
the sincerest form of flattery is imitation, and I was imitating what I saw, and I didn't catch that in editing, so my mistake. I should have caught that in editing. And the new policy is virtually verbatim from what Donna Brewer sent me, that she's done for other communities, and I think this is a really good effort to kind of help us be able to maintain some control of our social media sites. And I did find out that I misunderstood the conversation I had with Mr. Gates. We do have a Twitter account, and it is handled currently by Mr. Gates, so that's a good thing.
Okay, that's why I was baffled last time.
Bobby manages that, and I'm very good. He's also going to be establishing, at my request, an Instagram account for us too, because I
Oh, great.
believe that
Yeah, that's
a
the way
picture
most
speaks
people do,
1,000
yeah.
words, and a lot of people are migrating to Instagram from Facebook, even though they're
will.
owned by the same company.
I will follow us on Instagram when we have it.
So, so the first 2 policies, this is their second reading. If you want to consider that the new policy is, this is a first reading for that, we could hold that off and take it up again at another meeting for second reading. This was generated by our legal counsel at the request of, well, both the legal counsel and I think Allison had suggested this might be a good way to go, so.
All right, so of the 3 policies we have in front of us.
I have a question.
Yeah, I knew you would.
Of course you did. So the first one I would like to discuss is for appointed and elected boards committee members.
Okay.
Page 3, item 6.
Okay.
Says, last sentence, reporting your issue to your supervisor. I feel that elected officials may not have a supervisor.
Number 6, page 3.
Number 6, page 3.
Oh, I see it. Right at the end. Taking action themselves, reporting an issue to a supervisor.
Yeah. I don't think we have a supervisor to report to.
I would say we don't.
I would say we shouldn't say that.
Okay.
Would we change it to anything or just strike it?
Change it to,
Change it to a,
I would strike, but
for the officials should express the president. I guess I gotta read the whole thing here.
I'm actually really not sure what that sentence does,
Right.
now that I'm reading it.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if it
either.
I'm okay to strike.
Okay. And then the last page, second to last page, section 6, discipline.
Say that again, Allison, where are you again?
Sure. Second to last page, section 6, discipline.
Okay.
If we,
Elected officials may be subject to a request for their resignation.
I would assume that would mean by the remaining members of their board or the board they report to. So a board or committee, well, an elected official, your board, for instance, could request somebody to resign. You don't have to follow it.
Yeah,
But
that's the way I took it.
If you feel really strongly, you'd be able to say, we as a board vote whatever number to request the resignation of such, so that that gives you the opportunity to make a strong statement that you disagree
Right,
with the actions of that member. And that doesn't mean that that member has to follow that.
Yeah, I just don't like the language because we're not, we're elected by the residents. We're not subject to the other board members' votes.
It's totally up to you.
Right, but I think that, it's not saying that you have to resign. I'm just, I read it
It says
as,
could be subject to a request for my resignation, when I shouldn't be subject to a request for my resignation when we don't have the authority to request someone's resignation.
so you're saying you would just strike the request for the resignation, so it would be subject to public censure or reprimand?
Public censure, we know, it's the public that again, I'm not in agreement with this policy for elected officials, which I stated at the last reading, because elected officials are different than appointed officials, and we're trying to commingle our actions for two different groups that are treated differently, and that's where I'm finding trouble.
So I guess I'm following you, but I'm not following you. I guess I'm wondering, are you saying there's no discipline that's available? Other than the next time you're up for election, people decide not to vote for you?
It all depends on what you've done, but for the most part, saying something on social media, I could be wrong. Expressing an opinion on social media is not subject to the reprimand of this board or a request from this board to ask someone of any elected official to resign.
So,
I think we're overstepping.
I don't know. I'd like to hear from Donna, but I think that one of the things that, a lot of other cities and towns have adopted things like this, and they have the same issues as far as what they can do as far as removing somebody. But the fact is, if somebody says, I don't really even want to get into making, but if not anybody on this current board, say in 2 years, some other person we don't know gets elected, and then shortly after getting elected goes on, a racist, bigoted rant on Facebook, calling out somebody who works in the department or who used to work in a department. I think it's, even without this policy, it would be within the rights of the Board of Selectmen to say, take a vote and say, we ask you to resign because we don't feel that what you stated in that post is reflective of the values of this community or this board of selectmen. That person can decide not to, but it's certainly at any time still within the right of the board to say, we disagree with that action so strongly that we want you to resign. That doesn't require you to do it.
Right.
And by having it in a policy like this, what you're doing is you're establishing that you want people to realize that they're to be held to a higher standard.
There's consequences.
Well, I think hopefully if we're elected to a board, we understand there's consequences, and we understand our behavior has consequences. I, again, just don't know, and maybe legally you can do that. I think we're overstepping in the policy. That's my personal opinion.
I mean, I guess I hear what you're saying, but I don't feel we're overstepping, I guess, because I hopefully don't see a scenario where this comes up and we have to ask a board member or future board member to resign, but I mean, I think you're making a point that you have to be respectful and be careful of what you're putting out there as a board member on these social
Well, I'd be
sites.
careful too, though, because you had some appointed members of this community that's made some pretty harsh statements recently on Facebook. So if you pass this, I hope you will uphold this. But, Donna, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but can we legally ask another elected official to resign from another board or this board?
Anyone can ask an elected official to resign. It doesn't have the force of law, or it doesn't have the force of policy.
Okay.
So if this board wanted, it's nothing different from the board voting a public censure, which is what it is. I think the difficulty with all of these social media policies and trying to police what people say on social media is the First Amendment issue, where people have the right to say what their opinions are and put them out there for the public. And they can even do so saying, I am a member of the Board of Selectmen, or I am a member of the Planning Board, and this is my opinion. There are constraints, though, under case law for what public officials can say in the sense of, as a public official, saying something that is antithetical to the interests of the town and doing so in their role as a public official. For example, I'm aware of one case that went fairly high up in the federal courts involving a fire department chief who publicized that he disagreed with the town's vote on the fire department budget. And he was interviewed in his police chief uniform, fire chief uniform, by the local press, speaking out against what the town had done to his departmental budget. He was fired, and that was upheld. So there are tricky lines in all of these social media policies for appointed and elected officials to draw that razor-thin tightrope between what you can sanction or censure somebody for or relieve them from their appointed post over what they have said versus what their First Amendment rights are.
Can I ask you another question while you're up there, because I have a question? This policy says that it's, we would like it to be, it's for all elected board and committee members of the town of Hamilton. So how does that school committee members fit in this? I know we have no jurisdiction over the school committee, I'm quite clear on that.
Right,
but we
there's
seem,
still a town committee, right?
you're still a town committee, and we're saying it affects all elected officials.
Right. So it's actually not a town committee. It is a regional school committee, and it's got a separate legal existence. However, under the ethics law, every member of the school committee is considered to be an employee for the purposes of the ethics law under both Hamilton and Wenham. I would expect that this policy being adopted by the Board of Selectmen would not be binding on the school committee.
Good to know.
Good question.
Thank you.
What if we adopt this policy and elected officials choose not to sign and acknowledge it?
They are free to ignore the requirement of signing and acknowledging.
Okay.
It's just with our code of conduct and all of it, it's very, same thing.
Same thing. Elected officials are indeed their own.
A unique entity, right?
Yes.
Yeah. May I ask, Donna, while you're there, for the second one, the Town of Hamilton social media policy for employees? Do you know if, has this gone through legal review? Have you read this actual? Well, I don't think you have, because it says that any questions to ask the town administrator.
Hopefully I would have caught that.
But I also feel, even for employees, which I do believe employees are subject to a number of these items, and that we're telling employees use on town policy, but this policy appears to me, how it's written, to be overstepping. I think we're commingling terms, so it appears as though we're telling employees what they can say on their personal websites.
You're talking under general provisions?
Yeah, I'm just talking generally,
just
reading through it, it just felt,
It's just saying the town requires that the content of any of these postings on social media sites or other web pages not be in violation of existing town bylaws, policies, directives, rules, or regulations.
the last sentence in that says, that is, while the town acknowledges its employees have a First Amendment right to free speech, that right is not absolute and extends only to matters of public concern. So I can only have free speech if I'm talking about public concern?
I'm not sure of the specific intent, but I'm gathering that the whole policy is going to be limited to those things that advance or detract from the town's business. So I would not read the policy to be saying that you can't comment on social media on your private Facebook page about your granddaughter's birthday party.
Well, but it's just, when if you read this, I wouldn't disagree, and I would agree that that's all we should be trying to say. But when you read it, users must ensure that they're always honest and accurate when posting information or news. And again, it's just, a lot of this policy seems to commingle to me on town computers versus personal computers versus, and that's why I questioned if we had legal counsel review it, because it didn't quite, it didn't read well to me, but.
As a general matter, under case law, under the First Amendment law, it is in fact the case that just because you are putting something on your private Facebook page or your private Instagram, that is not something that the town can censure you for or even fire you for. For example, look at all the cases lately that have been coming out about public safety officers, police officers, saying some pretty racist things on their private Facebook pages, or even liking something on Twitter and getting in trouble with their town employer over that. So those things that are posted on private sites by otherwise private people who have a public position can indeed be regulated by the public employer.
And I would agree with that as well. I just am concerned that this is not worded appropriately, and then therefore we don't, that we only implement what we can legally implement and not implement. So it's just, I think the intent is good. I understand the law they're trying to follow, but I think the wording is off, and it could lead a supervisor or someone to reprimand when you shouldn't reprimand. That's just.
Yeah, if the board wants to vote to ask Joe to work with me on trying to tighten the language up, we can certainly do so, if that's shared by the majority of the board.
Which one is the new one I'm looking at tonight? Refresh my memory. We've looked at this one before.
Yeah, the new one, the only one that you're looking at that's new is this one here.
The town-owned sites.
Town-owned sites.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That's the only new one.
All right.
So the town-owned sites is the first reading.
Right.
Right, and the other two.
So, I guess for me, and we can discuss it, that the one for appointed elected board committee members, I'm okay with. The Town of Hamilton social media policy for the employees, I think there's some typo things with the town administrator, and have Donna look at the language a little bit and see if there's any other wordsmithing to do that kind of make it more clear, to Allison's point. I would say do that. And then we haven't looked at the third one yet, so let's move on to that one.
So for the third one, I have a question on page 2J.
Yep.
Item 1. So J states, postings to town social media sites shall not contain any of the following: comments in support of or opposition to political campaigns or candidates.
Mm-hmm.
So we recently posted a flyer of question and answers as a way of example on the post in Patton Homestead. I would say that that was a political campaign. And we were posting something on our town website in support of it.
And I guess I interpret it as more of a politician campaign. You know,
So
like
I actually looked up the
office.
definition of political campaign,
Yep,
and it is
it covers.
anything coming in front of your voters.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't have to be for a candidate. So I would say, to me, that reads, and thankfully Donna is here to answer.
I mean, to the point of that, what if we just wordsmith that political campaigns to directly mean what I interpreted as like an individual's run for office type of thing? Is that?
Well, I'm curious if we can do that, as far as, I'm assuming we can, do political support for or
Stomach stuffing.
against a political campaign.
So a couple of different things. So while campaign under the dictionary is read rather broadly, under campaign and political finance law, it doesn't apply to anything that's that's strictly town meeting. So that's one thing. Whether you take that more limited definition into account for this policy or not is a question I'd leave to you guys, but just to recognize that that distinction is made under Massachusetts campaign and political finance law. Secondly, excuse me, town resources, monetary resources, employee resources, equipment resources can be used for certain political issues, for supporting things that the Board of Selectmen votes. So, for example, if you had a Prop 2.5 question that the Board of Selectmen supported and was on the ballot, right, you can in fact spend town resources to support that. So you could have something on the town website in support of that. And you would not be forced to put opposition on the town website just because you put in your support. You don't have to use town resources evenly for something that's supported by the Board of Selectmen. The question is that we want to avoid, or the issue we want to avoid, is turning the town website into a public forum.
Right.
We really don't want to do that, because then you're going to have everybody and his uncle trying to put things up there, oftentimes that are not going to be things that the town is going to support, that you as a board are going to support. So I think the intent of that was to try to avoid turning our social media sites into a public forum. You just don't have that same concern when you're sending out a brochure or a flyer to people in the town in support of an issue. I still am not sure how we're going to avoid turning a website into a public forum or a Facebook page into a public forum if we start permitting issues to be discussed, debated on our social media sites.
Town-specific social media sites?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got,
The
you know,
official
Town of
one to Facebook,
Hamilton.
the official Town of Hamilton
Right.
Instagram or whatever.
Right.
And I actually very much view this policy as trying to do just what you said.
Yeah.
In recognition of everything you just said as far as being able to share information. You know, if the Board of Selectmen votes to have an override, and you want to share information about why you took that vote,
Right.
then the town
Why you're
media sites
supporting
are
it,
the
right.
way to do that. So, but that's what it's meant for. It's meant for a way for the town to share information in a new age where people get their information in different ways. It gives us an opportunity to meet people where they're consuming information. But we don't want to get into a back and forth with folks on it. It's meant only to broadcast, not to, and to take in, but not to have a debate. If they want to have a debate, we can do that here on Monday nights, or we can do it at the planning board meetings, or at ZBA meetings, or at the town meeting floor, but not on the social media sites.
I'm not tech savvy enough, and so maybe this is where you get Bobby or somebody else to help us, but I'm not tech savvy enough to know if you can post things in a certain place and not permit people to respond, either to comment on it or to retweet it or to like it or whatever.
You can hide comments. As the site administrator, you can hide comments, or you can disable comments, I believe,
Can you?
on those sites.
Yeah.
So you can do those
Yeah.
things,
Disable.
and you would look to do that. And I think also, you know, one of the things that I learned when I was in Winthrop was that, you know, without having a policy like this, it doesn't allow us to remove abhorrent
Right, something that's up
comments
there
and
that you
things
don't want there.
without removing everybody's comments. In other words, so, you know, a bunch of people make, you know, benign comments and just say something about what they just read, but without being disparaging. And then some other joker gets on and says something really, really bad about, you know, my mother. You know, I can't take down that post about my mother without taking down all of the other comments.
Right.
Unless we have a policy like this.
I'm for the policy. That sentence seemed to read off to me, that's all.
You're right, and that's the question that you guys have to answer, which is, do you want to just cut off all potential campaign in the broadest sense of the word, commentary or statements, or will you permit the town to put some on so long as nobody can respond through that same social media site?
Or even, maybe even add approved by town manager or something. I don't know, as far as that way it's vetted in some way.
The idea being that we would only be sharing the information that was in support of a previous vote of a Board of Selectmen or a planning board, if there's a planning board article or something. Because that's one of our outlets for sharing information about those things that the boards vote to do, so.
Right.
I wouldn't want to see you, remove that ability completely, because then really what purpose does, it's gonna, the social media sites will serve a very limited purpose then.
Right.
Oh, hey, everybody, the lights are out. Well, they're not gonna see that anyway, because the lights are out, so, I just want to be able to sites for what they're intended for.
So,
I might recommend
Gonna
at this
say.
point that you would let Joe and me muse a little bit more about
just gonna suggest
what
that.
your position is, and maybe come back to you guys with some language that seems to reflect this.
And this one's a
issue.
first reading anyway, so you're gonna probably want to do this one more time.
Yeah.
We can massage this one and the other policy that you spoke about. Having Donna double check.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so, let's see. I would entertain a motion to accept.
Would it be easier to just do the, I'm sorry.
Let's just do it, let's do them all.
at the same
Yeah, let's
time?
do that, instead of trying to
to-
pit and parcel them out.
And that way they're,
Right, so let's,
if they get voted, they all
let's
take
bring these
effect
back
together.
for a, hopefully a
reading.
final reading or third reading on all of them,
Okay.
and then we'll move on from there.
And I agree with you, but I would like to ask if, and I did at the last meeting, if town council has not reviewed the elected and appointed committee members' policy, I would also like that,
I
I'd
will
like
give them
all
all to her.
three
Yeah,
to
all
be
three. I'll give
reviewed
them all
by
to her.
legal
Yep.
counsel.
Nope, that sounds good
Give
to
them
me.
all to her. Maybe, hopefully, we've now caught all the typos and stuff before they get back here.
New business. Jeff, new business?
No?
I like that.
I do.
Mary Alice?
Yeah, we didn't do
It
it.
was.
Yeah,
Okay.
did you?
Actually, we didn't,
We skipped it.
we skipped it,
We did not vote it.
because we skipped your report in the
At
consent.
this point, I don't want to keep everybody here to, would like to say one or two things after you take up the consent agenda. I have a town meeting, I have a town manager's
Donna,
report that's
thank you.
included.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
I have a town manager's report that we sent out to you, or will send out to you, but I don't want to recite all of it here tonight, just maybe one or two things.
So you know, it's funny, when
We
I,
need to take the.
oh, there it is. I'm sorry, Joe, you were saying something.
Yeah, no, good call, Mary Alice. I had it down here because I didn't have a check next week. You need to vote the minutes on the consent agenda. And then, I don't necessarily want to go through this whole thing. I'll share it out to each of you and post it online, but
Yeah.
there's one or two things here I'd like to
Sure, that's
let
perfect.
you know about.
All right, so let's do the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is approve minutes from the Board of Selectmen regular and executive sessions from September 24th, 2018. Does anybody want to,
So moved.
Thank you.
and a second, Allison?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Perfect. All right, and now our town manager report, highlight reel.
Yeah, the highlight reel. Wanted to let you know that Vicky Masson, the energy manager, has received a $12,500 grant for technical assistance to help study solar feasibility on municipal buildings. So I've met with her, and I've authorized her to work with MAPC. MAPC has a solar technical procurement contract, so we don't have to go out and procure it. As a member of MAPC, we can procure through them, and they're a company that Vicky has worked with in the past, so we feel like it might be a good fit. She's going to get a price from them and see if we can get the work done and look at those things for us. As I mentioned before, Tim Olson has asked us to bring to you at the next meeting a removal of the water ban for a vote next meeting. And he also wanted me to mention that the Echo Cove Road project is scheduled to begin sometime in the next few weeks. We have, I actually signed today a contract with the paving company. They expect it to be just a couple-day job, but they're going to try to hit a window that depends on both weather and the availability of pavement for them. So, and the last thing I'll pull up out of here, we have, I told you at the last meeting that we were losing somebody out of our treasurer collector's office. We also have a person in that office going on medical leave. So we are gratefully accepted the services of Caroline Johnson on a temporary full-time basis to assist. Caroline has previously worked in the treasurer's departments in both Manchester and Wenham, and she was retired, and she agreed to come back and help us.
Great.
So if you're in town hall, stop in and say hi and welcome to Caroline. We are currently advertising for that position. With the open position and the impending medical leave, that gives us, technically we're down 2 people there. We also have medical leaves, 2 other employees going out on medical leave shortly. So we're always short-staffed, and we're a little shorter these days.
Yeah.
Allison spoke to the designer services RFP that closed, and so I think that's the main thing we wanted to make you aware of.
And if you haven't driven by the Patton Homestead, work is underway.
I don't know if they can zoom in on this, but this is actually a photograph. I don't know if you guys can zoom in on this with the cameras, but you'll see that this part of the building here looks like new, because that's the place where the work's been completed, and the rest of the building is getting work done now. So the shutters, the frames, the painting, obviously it's going to get some roof and gutter work and stuff as well. But you know, if you look, if you can see, if they can pick that up on the camera, the piece here to the left as I hold it up is what the whole building should look like when it's done, so.
Very nice.
All right.
That's a good thing.
That is a good thing. Allison, new business.
Did we vote the consent agenda again? I
We
think we
did.
skipped it again.
Nope,
we
we
did.
voted it.
Nope.
We voted?
All that was on it was the
You went like
minutes.
this.
All that was on it was the minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
just the minutes.
Census data and
Yep.
building on Article 97 land.
Yes, we had on there about the census data, but because of early voting, a number of other things.
No
and
problem.
the very lengthy agenda that we had.
We haven't forgotten about it.
We haven't forgot about it.
All right, I'll save my new business for another time.
FinCom joint meeting.
Yep, FinCom
social
joint
media
meeting on the
policy,
5th.
Census data, what was the other census data, and what was the other?
Article 97 land.
97 land, okay.
I'll entertain a motion to get out of here.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
yay.
Aye. Fantastic. Thanks for sticking with us, Duke.
Thanks.
Thank you very
Thanks, Duke.
much.